We say fight back!
Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. TV needs you. I mean, you know that, right? You're watching the show. Right now, everybody and his brother and sisters is at fundraising drive. We heard it on the radio yesterday, the local NPR station, the local Pacifica station. Everybody is in fund drive. It's spring. It's the beginning of a new year. It's also a political season when every politician on earth is asking for money. I get it that we're all I get letters from Donald Trump begging for money, right? Which I share with you on this program. I do that so you don't have to. But the bottom line is that Free Speech TV we're not hitting our goals. We haven't hit our goal any day yet so far in this fund drive. We are way behind, and we need your help. This network is really an important thing. This network is an important part of the media ecosphere, the landscape. I had this is not Congressman Pocan I'm speaking of, but I had a congressman on the show a while ago, and later on we were talking, and he said, I was just amazed. He said, I travel all around the country, and everywhere I go, people say to me, hey, I heard that you were on Thom Hartmann's program, or, Thom Hartmann said such and such, or whatever. Or, he was amazed. I'm not. I mean, not by way of bragging or anything, but Free Speech TV, we're on Dish, we're on DirecTV, we're on cable, we're on the internet. The things that have been accomplished by this little tiny network with a budget that's literally less than half of the annual paycheck of one of the evening MSNBC stars. This little network on this little budget literally reaches the entire country, especially in red states where people don't have easy access to cable, so they get satellite TV, maybe you, and they get satellite TV, and there's skipping through the channels and, oh, what's this Free Speech TV thing? That sounds kind of cool. Check this out. And it's like, whoa, somebody's talking the truth? I mean, right? The almost shock that people experience when they see a television program on a national television network with millions of viewers going, on which you will hear somebody say, well, Richard Nixon committed treason to become president. So apparently did Ronald Reagan. George Herbert Walker Bush shouldn't have been president. When they did the recount in Florida, they found that Al Gore actually won the election. Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man. Well, that's becoming obvious to the country. But the rest of it, do you hear that on other television networks? I don't. Do you hear about the corruption in the White House on other television networks? How many lobbyists, how many billionaires are in the cabinet? How many lobbyists are heading up federal agencies right now? how they're auctioning off, our public lands, the Interior Department, how they're shutting down regulations that keep your children and grandchildren safe from the poisons that come out of the petro-billionaires' factories and refineries. I mean, you don't hear that on the other networks. You don't hear about the money that the petro-billionaires are pouring into the campaigns, that every single Republican who's going to be, going after Michael Cohen or anybody else, frankly, every single one of those Republicans is taking money from petro-billionaires and other billionaires whose really only interest is to continue polluting the planet and making a profit by ripping us off, essentially. You just don't hear it. You do hear. So please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution now. We need your help. $20 gets you a flag lapel pin, a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV 6 sticker pack. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of my brand new book. It just became available on Amazon, but it's only available for pre-order. It won't be out until June. We're hoping, assuming that we'll get advance copies perhaps the last week of May, and I can get autographed book plates in them, and we can get them to you as an autographed copy of my brand new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which tells the true story of the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment was passed to preserve the slave patrols, specifically in Virginia and Georgia, although the Carolinas were also very concerned about that. But, this is mostly the work of Patrick Henry, the guy who said, "Give me liberty or give me death," and was the biggest slaveholder in Virginia. Irony of ironies, huh?
1 minute.
This is, anyhow, that's that book, $72 for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. A $100 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt with a $200 gift, the Free Speech TV hoodie with a $360 gift, everything I just mentioned, including my new book, although, again, with the caveat that it'll be a few months before you get it in the mail. They literally have not yet been printed. I haven't seen it yet. With a $500 gift, Louise and I are putting together another webinar. You watch us in real time. You can ask questions, interact with us on the internet about dealing with resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma, and not just political stuff. And with a $1,000 gift, we have a meet and greet. You can come here to Portland, Oregon. You can sit right over there on the couch and watch the show for the last hour, and then we'll go next door and or down the street, and we'll have some lunch, and we'll have a great time. So call 877-378-8669 now, please. Thank you.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And Michael Cohen is testifying before Congress right now. Right-wing Republican Mr. Gosar, I think is how it's pronounced, is interrogating him. We're going to go to the hearings, and we're going to, throughout the day here, basically play the hearing as it's happening, and then we'll come back and pick up your phone calls during the breaks. They will break for lunch probably in an hour or so. And I will pop in from time to time and offer some thoughts and commentary. But I think by and large, most Americans want to hear what's going on in Congress. And so we're going to go right to that right now.
Start telling the truth.
There are several factors. Helsinki, Charlottesville, watching the daily destruction of our civility to one another.
This voice is Michael Cohen.
Putting up silly things like this.
Oh, that's silly.
Really unbecoming of Congress. It's that sort of behavior that I'm responsible for. I'm responsible for your silliness because I did the same thing that you're doing now for 10 years. I protected Mr. Trump for 10 years. And the fact that you pull up a news article that has no value to it, and you want to use that as the premise for discrediting me, that I'm not the person that people called at 3 o'clock in the morning, would make you inaccurate. In actuality, would make you a liar, which puts you into the same position that I am in. And I can only warn people, the more people that follow Mr. Trump, as I did blindly, are going to suffer the same consequences that I'm suffering.
What warning would you give young people who are tempted, as you were? Would you encourage them not to wait 10 years to see the light? What advice would you give young people, in particular young lawyers, so they do not abuse their bar license as you did?
Look at what's happened to me. I had a wonderful life. I have a beautiful wife. I have 2 amazing children. And I achieved financial success by the age of 39. I didn't go to work for Mr. Trump because I had to. I went to work for him because I wanted to. And I've lost it all. So if I'm not a picture perfect, that's the picture that should be up there. If I'm not a picture perfect example of what not to do, that's the example that I'm trying to set for my children. You make mistakes in life, and I've owned them, and I've taken responsibility for them. And I'm paying a huge price, as is my family. So if that in and of itself isn't enough to dissuade somebody from acting in the callous manner that I did, I'm not sure that that person has any chance, very much like I'm in right now.
A recurring theme in your testimony is concern for your family's safety. What specifically are you most concerned about?
Well, the president, unlike my Cohen for Trump that has 1,000 followers, he's got over 60 million people. And when Mr. Trump turned around early in the campaign and said, I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and get away with it, I want to be very clear. He's not joking. He's telling you the truth. He said, you don't know him. I do. I sat next to this man for 10 years, and I watched his back. I'm the one who started the campaign, and I'm the one who continued in 2015 to promote him. And so many things I thought that he can do that are just great. And he can, and he is doing things that are great. But this destruction of our civility to one another is just, it's out of control. And when he goes on Twitter and he starts bringing in my in-laws, my parents, my wife, what does he think is going to happen? He's sending out the same message that he can do whatever he wants. This is his country. He's becoming an autocrat. And hopefully something bad will happen to me or my children or my wife so that I will not be here and testify. That's what his hope was. It was to intimidate me. And again, I thanked everybody who joined and said that this is just not right.
Have you ever seen Mr. Trump personally threaten people with physical harm?
No. He would use others.
He would hire other people to do that?
I'm not so sure that he had to hire them. They were already working there. Everybody's job at the Trump Organization is to protect Mr. Trump. Every day, most of us knew we were coming in and we were going to lie for him on something. And that became the norm. And that's exactly what's happening right now in this country. And it's exactly what's happening here in government, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time has expired.
Mr. Armstrong.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can we take a break?
All right.
I did, sir.
We'll see if they're going to take a break here. I'm not sure exactly
So
what's going on. Chairman Cummings.
That's okay. Thank you, sir.
His mic isn't
Thank
open,
you.
so we can't quite tell what's going on, but it looks like they're getting up and taking a break. So very interesting times, and I think one of the most interesting things, one of the most interesting pieces of this entire thing was this last interaction between Congressman Gosar and Michael Cohen. I'm not sure exactly who asked for the break. Sure, were you watching the screen when that happened? Did you notice who it was? Was it Michael Cohen? It sounded like it was Michael Cohen, but I'm not sure. Because I was watching that thinking, and perhaps, if you have thoughts on this, feel free to give us a shout, 202-808-9925, and we can talk about this on the air as well. But what I thought was so interesting about Gosar's interaction was he started out trying to play Jim Jordan or Mark Meadows, the guys who are the kind of wholly owned subsidiaries of the Koch network and the other petro-billionaires, and Donald Trump, apparently, right? And he started out by trying to go after Michael Cohen. At what point? And in Cohen's answer, he said to this Republican, Gosar, I think he's a Republican from Texas, as I recall. Let me just take a quick look here. No, he's not Texas. He's from the suburbs of Phoenix. Cohen says to Gosar, I protected this guy for 10 years. You're doing it right now. And I caution you, I'm paraphrasing here, and I caution you, sir, that you and other people who continue to protect Donald Trump, you're going to end up in a situation like I am, disgraced. I don't think he literally meant going to prison, but disgraced. And at that point, Gosar's testimony, or questioning rather, this Republican from Arizona, suddenly changed. And it became, well, okay, what advice would you have for young people? What advice would you have for lawyers? I mean, that was, at that point, I wonder if that was and is going to be remembered as the, I think his name was Robert Welch, the fellow who in the McCarthy Army hearings in the United States Senate back in the 1950s, I think it was 54, 56, whatever the year was, where Senator McCarthy was going off on some drunken tirade about a young man, either in the State Department or the Army, and accusing him of being a communist. And the lawyer, Mr. Welsh, said, have you at long last, sir, no decency? And that moment, I mean, I was so young, I have no recollection of that. Most people have been born since then, most people who are alive today. But that moment still is burned into the history of our country. And I'm wondering if that response to Gosar will be also. So anyhow, your thoughts. Cheryl in Philadelphia. Hey, Cheryl. Thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up? Your thoughts?
Yeah. Hey, it's riveting. Cohen, he's a snake. It takes a snake to work with a snake in that organization. But I think he does have remorse, and he cares about his family. I mean, the guy is ruined, basically, career-wise. I wanted to make a point about the congressman that pulled the black woman up, the young black woman who works for that congressman or someone. She stood behind him. I mean, that's a tactic they're going to use. I mean, there are blacks in the cabinet. Omarosa worked for him. Trump saw value in her from The Apprentice and knew she was smart and knew he needed to surround himself with some blacks. But Trump is a racist. He wouldn't have gone after President Obama the way he did with the whole birther thing. He started his campaign pretty much on the birther argument. It's a matter of time before the young woman who stood up in his defense today will see the light, so to speak. Again, the racism is for real. So many things have happened, and we all know it. And I hope they go down that line of questioning a little more. Anyway, that's all I have to say. It's not a great day for this country.
Yeah.
Anyway, you look at it. Yeah, it's sad.
I am with you. And Karen Hunter, by the way, one of my colleagues over at SiriusXM, tweeted earlier. I'm frantically looking for it right now, but I probably won't easily find it. She tweeted about how. Hang on just a second. Actually, I know how to find it. It would be Karen Hunter. Karen Hunter. There we go. That just killed my Twitter feed. Anyhow, she tweeted that a racist is perfectly capable of hiring a black person. A racist is perfectly capable of, I'm paraphrasing now from memory, perfectly capable of exploiting or, let's say, benefiting from the work of a black person. If that were not the case, you would not have had slavery. You would not have the United States. The United States would not have been built by black people. And that a racist is even capable of being sexually attracted to a black person. One of the allegations that's being made right now by an African-American woman who says, it's after he was president, Trump tried to, move on her like he described in that Access Hollywood tape. So, to your point, I'm agreeing with you, Cheryl, and I think I think Karen said it really well. Would you disagree with her?
A racist is not immune to hiring in his organization numerous Latino workers who are undocumented.
Yep.
In his golf clubs.
Yep. And using that. In fact, I would say, we don't know specifically that Donald Trump used their their immigration status to threaten them, but they certainly feel that way right now. Cheryl, thank you. Very well said. We'll be right back. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. We're listening to the Cohen hearings as they're going on. Right now they're in a break, and so we're talking about them. Your thoughts right after this.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We'll be right back. It's 18 minutes past the hour. Here's the exact quote from Karen Hunter. I found it after the break. She says, and another thing, racists hire black people all the damn time. How do you think this country got built? You can be a racist and even fancy a black person in a sexual relationship. You can be a racist and have one or two black friends. It's complicated. Amen. Sam in Asheville, North Carolina. Hey, Sam, what's on your mind?
I've been watching the Cohen hearing testimony as well, and it reminds me of the old Westerns when the good guy and the bad guy were in a gunfight. The bad guy ran out of bullets and then threw the gun at the good guy. The Republicans don't have any bullets. They're throwing the gun.
Yeah.
They don't have. All they can do is sit there and say, you lied, you lied, you lied. That's all any of them have said so far.
Well,
That's
and keep in mind, they opened the hearings by trying to shut down the hearings.
Well, they're toast and they know it.
Yeah.
And as far as Cohen goes, I'm a recovering alcoholic, 26 years under my belt, almost 27.
Good on you, Sam.
Not toot my own horn, but I've been in thousands of AA meetings with tens of thousands of people bearing their souls to each other, and have participated and said myself, this is what Cohen looks like to me. He looks to me like he is as sincere as somebody in a 12-step meeting, experience, sharing their experience, strengths, and hopes.
Yeah, I think he's been through the legal equivalent of that 12-step program.
Yeah.
We both know what we're talking about, or what we mean. I mean,
Either way, the Gophers are toast, and that's a good thing for the country. The last caller said it was a terrible thing for the country. No, it's a good day for the country.
I think so too. Sam, thanks a lot for the call. Thanks for listening to us there in Asheville. I appreciate it. Jeff in Las Vegas, watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Jeff, what's up?
Hi. Just like he said, Cohen said, he said he was there protecting Trump every day of his job. Likewise, now the people who are working in government under Trump are doing the exact same thing. Isn't there some way that we can draw more attention to, rather than the buffoon that Trump is and all the fanfare that goes on around watching this circus going on? What about the system, which I think it is, like Richard Wolff often talks about? It's the system that we really have to worry about trying to fix. How can enough attention be drawn through this whole media watch of the Trump? How can more attention be brought to the fact that, hey, this is a systemic problem of capitalism, and take it from there?
Yeah. Well, I think to a certain extent, that is a meta message, a sub message, or a structural message underneath the message that Michael Cohen is delivering right now, which is that, he was, that Trump is a corrupt man, that the Trump organization is a corrupt, is a criminal organization, that he participated in this in exchange for good pay and lots of good access to all kinds of perks and bennies for 10 years.
Yeah.
The thing that astonishes me that we haven't heard yet is no Democrat has pointed out that up until June of last year, Michael Cohen was the deputy chairman of the Republican National Committee. And that he was the vice president of the Trump Organization up until about a year and a half ago, and he had an office next door to Donald Trump's office in Trump Tower. Now, that's more than just Trump tweeting out, "Oh, he was my lawyer and other people's too." I'm waiting for the Democrats to really draw some blood and point that out. Jeff, thanks for the call. We'll be right back. Welcome back. 23 minutes past the hour. Congressman Mark Pocan normally is here in this time or the next hour. Typically on Wednesday is when he comes in and answers calls. We suggested to him that tomorrow might be a better day because the Cohen hearings are just going to suck all the air out of the room. We were going to have Marianne Williamson on also, and we had another guest that we were going to have on. We just kind of cleared the deck for the whole day. So what we'll be doing is going back and forth between the hearings when they're live. You will hear them live. And when they're not live, we can have a conversation about it. I'm wondering what this break is all about. I'm wondering what's going on. I'm wondering if the Republicans are going to change strategy, if they're going to start refusing to testify. Remember when during the Kavanaugh hearings, when the Republicans initially didn't ask questions, they had a woman ask questions on their behalf, this prosecutor person. I'm wondering if when Cohen said to Republican Congressman Gosar of Arizona, when Michael Cohen said to him, "Sir, I defended Trump for 10 years. That's why I'm in this chair and I'm going to prison. You are doing the same, and so are your colleagues. And I warn you," I'm paraphrasing here, "and I warn you that you may end up like me." And at that point, all of a sudden, Congressman Gosar's questions changed, and now we're in a break, right? And everybody's huddling. And I'm wondering if the Republicans are thinking, holy cow, is it going to come out? Is some Democrat going to point out that, and frankly, I think they should, that up until June of last year, Michael Cohen was the deputy chairman of the Republican National Committee. That up until last year, or maybe the year before, he was the vice president of the Trump organization, Trump's companies, and had an office right next to Trump's in Trump Tower. I'm waiting for a Republican to point that out. Anyhow, back to your calls. Edward, we have just a minute to, oh, no, we got a little more time than that until we hit the break. We're in good shape. Edward, what's on, in Sierra Madre, California, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom, long-time listener. Thank you.
Thank you,
for
Edward.
giving me the opportunity. Tom, you mentioned something I was going to mention, so I won't, go over that again. But you know what I thought was interesting when a representative, is a donor, I don't know his name, but he asked, he said, how can... Hey,
Edward, forgive me, I'm going to put you on hold because they just started the hearing. So we're going to go back to the hearing, and I'm going to put you on hold. We'll pick up our conversation here the next time there's a break. We'll be right back.
But there's not much that you won't lie about when you stand to gain from it. In fact, the prosecutors for the Southern District of New York noted that each of your crimes...
This is Representative Fox, Ms. Fox, F-O-X-X. I don't recall where she's from, but she's
being motivated by your personal greed and ambition. Is your appearance here today motivated by your desire to remain in the spotlight for your personal benefit?
No, ma'am.
You have sought out ways to rehabilitate your image, from tax evader, bank swindler, and all-around liar to an honorable, truthful man by appearing before cable news. I'm concerned you could be using your story and this congressional platform for your personal benefit, such as a desire to make money from book deals. So can you commit under oath that you have not and will not pursue a book or movie deal based on your experiences working for the president?
No.
You cannot commit to making money off of a book.
We're hitting a break here. We'll be back with more of the hearings and your thoughts and mine on it right after this. It's 27 minutes and change past the hour. We are listening to the Cohen hearings, and we will be in all probability throughout the program and discussing same with you during the times that they take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
This is an absolutely fascinating and probably one of the great historic moments of our lifetimes. We'll be back with this. TV needs you. I mean, you know that, right? You're watching the show. Right now, everybody and his brother and sisters is at fundraising drive. We heard it on the radio yesterday, the local NPR station, the local Pacifica station. Everybody is in fund drive. It's spring. It's the beginning of a new year. It's also a political season when every politician on earth is asking for money. I get it that we're all being, I get letters from Donald Trump begging for money, right? Which I share with you on this program. I do that so you don't have to. But the bottom line is that Free Speech TV we're not hitting our goals. We haven't hit our goal any day yet so far in this fund drive. We are way behind, and we need your help. This network is really an important thing. This network is an important part of the media ecosphere, the landscape. I had this is not Congressman Pocan I'm speaking of, but I had a congressman on the show a while ago, and later on we were talking, and he said, I was just amazed. He said, I travel all around the country, and everywhere I go, people say to me, hey, I heard that you were on Thom Hartmann's program, or, Thom Hartmann said such and such, or whatever. Or, he was amazed. I'm not. I mean, not by way of bragging or anything, but Free Speech TV, I mean, we're on Dish, we're on DirecTV, we're on cable, we're on the internet. The things that have been accomplished by this little tiny network with a budget that's literally less than half of the annual paycheck of one of the evening MSNBC stars. This little network on this little budget literally reaches the entire country, especially in red states where people don't have easy access to cable, so they get satellite TV, maybe you, and they get satellite TV, and they're skipping through the channels, and, oh, what's this Free Speech TV thing? That sounds kind of cool. Check this out. And it's like, whoa, somebody's talking the truth? I mean, right? The almost shock that people experience when they see a television program on a national television network with millions of viewers going, on which you will hear somebody say, well, Richard Nixon committed treason to become president. So apparently did Ronald Reagan. George Herbert Walker Bush shouldn't have been president. When they did the recount in Florida, they found that Al Gore actually won the election. Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man. Well, that's becoming obvious to the country. But the rest of it, do you hear that on other television networks? I don't. Do you hear about the corruption in the White House on other television networks? How many lobbyists, how many billionaires are in the cabinet? How many lobbyists are heading up federal agencies right now? How they're auctioning off, our public lands, the Interior Department, how they're shutting down regulations that keep your children and grandchildren safe from the poisons that come out of the petro-billionaires' factories and refineries. I mean, you don't hear that on the other networks. You don't hear about the money that the petro-billionaires are pouring into the campaigns, that every single Republican who's going to be, going after Michael Cohen or anybody else, frankly, every single one of those Republicans is taking money from petro-billionaires and other billionaires whose really only interest is to continue polluting the planet and making a profit by ripping us off, essentially. You just don't hear it. You do hear. So please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution now. We need your help. $20 gets you a flag lapel pin, a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV 6 sticker pack. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of my brand new book. It just became available on Amazon, but it's only available for pre-order. It won't be out until June. We're hoping, assuming that we'll get advance copies perhaps the last week of May, and I can get autographed book plates in them, and we can get them to you as an autographed copy of my brand new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which tells the true story of the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment was passed to preserve the slave patrols, specifically in Virginia and Georgia, although the Carolinas were also very concerned about that. But, this is mostly the work of Patrick Henry, the guy who said, give me liberty or give me death, and was the biggest slaveholder in Virginia. Irony of ironies, huh?
1 minute.
This is, anyhow, that's that book, $72 for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. $100 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt with a $200 gift, the Free Speech TV hoodie with a $360 gift, everything I just mentioned, including my new book, although, again, with the caveat that it'll be a few months before you get it in the mail. They literally have not yet been printed. I haven't seen it yet. With a $500 gift, Louise and I are putting together another webinar. This is where you watch us in real time. You can ask questions, interact with us on the internet about dealing with resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma, and not just political stuff. And with a $1,000 gift, we have a meet and greet. You can come here to Portland, Oregon. You can sit right over there on the couch and watch the show for the last hour, and then we'll go next door and we'll have her down the street and we'll have some lunch and we'll have a great time. So call 877-378-8669 now, please. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
May of 20.
With Jay Sekulow, and it was in regard to specifically.
Well,
but what I will do is I will check all my records.
And we're back. We're going to go
happy
back to the Michael
provide
Cohen hearings right now. Here we go.
Or a response to this question.
Well, that's you sort of touch on presumably the purpose of the discussion, at least among others. This meeting occurred just before your testimony before the Select Committee on Intelligence here in the House. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Was that a topic of conversation with the President himself?
If this is the specific instance that I was there with Mr. Sekulow, yes.
So you had a conversation with the President of the United States about your impending testimony before the House Intelligence Committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
What was the nature of that conversation?
He wanted me to cooperate. He also wanted just to ensure, by making the statement, and I said it in my testimony, there is no Russia, there is no collusion, there is no deal. He goes, it's all a witch hunt, and he goes, this stuff has to end.
Did you take
that clip is going to be shaved by right-wing television or media? I promise you.
Flavor your testimony?
Sir, he's been saying that to me for many, many months, and at the end of the day, I knew exactly what he wanted me to say.
And why was Mr. Sekulow in the meeting?
Because he was going to be representing Mr. Trump going forward as one of his personal attorneys in this matter.
So it was sort of a handoff meeting.
Correct.
In any way, final question, did the President in any way, from your point of view, coach you in terms of how to respond to questions or the content of your testimony before a House committee?
Again, it's a difficult answer because he doesn't tell you what he wants. What he does is, again, Michael, there's no Russia, there's no collusion, there's no involvement, there's no interference. I know what he means because I've been around him for so long. So if you're asking me whether or not that's the message, that's staying on point, that's the party line that he created, that so many others are now touting, yes, that's the message that he wanted to reinforce.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
Mr. Massey.
Mr. Cohen, can you just clarify, did you say that at times you would do what you thought Mr. Trump wanted you to do, not specifically what he told you to do?
At times, yes.
So you just went on your intuition?
I don't know if I would call it intuition as much as I would just say my knowledge of what he wanted, because it happened before, and I knew what he had wanted.
Does a lawyer have a duty to provide his client with good legal advice?
Yes.
Were you a good lawyer to Mr. Trump?
I believe so.
When you arranged a payment to Ms. Clifford, you say in your testimony, I'm going to quote from your testimony, that you did so, quote, without bothering to consider whether that was improper, much less whether it was the right thing to do. You said that, unquote. That's your testimony today. You said you didn't even consider whether it was legal. How could you give your client legal advice when you're not even considering whether it's legal?
I did what I knew Mr. Trump wanted. This conversation with Mr. Trump
I didn't
started.
I didn't ask whether you're a good fixer. I asked whether you were a good lawyer.
Sometimes you have to melt both together. I needed to, at that time, ensure and protect Mr. Trump.
So-
And if I put which I'm clearly suffering the penalty of, I clearly erred on the side of wrong.
So you feel like without bothering to consider whether it was proper, much less whether it was the right thing to do, by ignoring any conscience, if you have one, that you were protecting Mr. Trump.
I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand.
You feel that was how to protect, as his lawyer, you feel that you did a good job. You said you were a good lawyer, right?
That's
Is that
correct.
being a good lawyer? To not even consider whether it's legal or not?
I didn't work for the campaign. I was working and I was trying to protect
say
Mr.
anything about
Trump.
a campaign.
I sat with
Trump.
Mr. Trump, and this goes back all the way to 2011. This wasn't the first scenario with Ms. Daniels.
Let's go back then.
So my point is, this was an ongoing situation. It didn't just start in
Right.
October. Sir,
I wanna
please,
go
you have
back.
to let me finish.
Well,
It started in it didn't start in October.
let me
it
ask you
started
specifically
many
on that.
years earlier.
When were you disbarred?
Yesterday, from what I read in the paper.
Yesterday. When should you have been disbarred, based on the legal counsel you were giving your client?
I don't have an answer for your question.
How
sir.
long were you counsel for Mr. Trump?
Since 2007.
When is the first time you gave him bad legal advice or failed to inform him of his legal obligations, as you testified today you did in the case of the payment to Ms. Clifford? When was the first time you did that? Would that qualify for disbarment?
I don't know, sir. I'm not the Bar Association.
I think you should consult with them maybe occasionally on some of these things.
Well, there's no point now. I lost my law license.
Has anybody else promised to pay Mr. Davis for representing you?
No.
Nobody has.
No. Are you offering?
Question, quickly. July, you said, and this is also in your testimony, in the days before the Democratic Convention, you became privy to a conversation that some of Hillary Clinton's emails would be leaked. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was that you said late July? Do you know the exact day?
I believe it was either the 18th or the 19th, and I would guess that it would be on the 19th.
But it was definitely July.
I believe so, yes.
Do you know that was public knowledge in June? This was Mr. Assange, and I'd like to submit this, unanimous consent to submit this for the record.
Without objection, so.
Mr. Assange reported to the media on June 12th that those emails would be leaked. So I'm not saying you have fake news, I'm saying you have old news, and there's really not much to that. I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cohen, I'm quoting you close I can. Earlier said, I spent last week looking through boxes to find documents that would support your accusations. Where are those boxes, good sir? Where are those boxes? Are they in your garage? Or?
They're in the storage.
And are these not boxes that should have been turned over to investigative authorities during the many criminal investigations you've been subject to?
Sir, these are the boxes that were returned to me
If
post the raid.
if they include data pertinent to crimes that you've committed, should they not have been turned over and remanded to investigative authority? Did Mr. Lanny Davis know of these boxes?
No,
Gentleman's time has expired. You may answer the question.
I don't understand his question, sir.
Very well. Christian Morsi.
Mr. Cohen. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Cummings, for convening this hearing, and thank you, Mr. Cohen, for voluntarily testifying this morning. Mr. Cohen, you were the Executive Vice President and Special Counsel for the Trump Organization, correct?
I was the Executive Vice President, Special Counsel to Donald J. Trump.
And Special Counsel means you were the attorney for him, is that right?
Just means I was there in order to handle matters that he felt were significant and important to him individually.
And those included legal matters?
Yes, sir.
Sir, as a former attorney, you're familiar with legal documents known as non-disclosure agreements, or NDAs, is that right?
Yes.
Sir, I'm sure you know that NDAs properly written in scope can be reasonable in certain business contexts, but they can also be abused to create a chilling effect to silence people as we've seen in the Me Too movement and other places. Isn't that right, Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
And Mr. Cohen, the Trump organization used NDAs extensively. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
Mr. Cohen, I'm reading from a recent Washington Post article regarding the language in one of these types of NDAs where the terms were described as very broad. For instance, the terms confidential information was defined to be anything that, quote, Mr. Trump insists remain private or confidential, including but not limited to any information with respect to the personal life, political affairs, and or business affairs of Mr. Trump or any family member, close quote. Do those terms sound familiar to you?
I've seen that document.
In fact, there's a class action lawsuit filed this month by former Trump campaign worker Jessica Denson that this NDA language is illegal because it is too broad, too vague, and would be used to retaliate against employees who complain of illegality or wrongdoing. Would you agree that in the use of these types of NDAs with this type of language, and later when Donald Trump sought to enforce them, that he intended to prevent people from coming forward with claims of wrongdoing?
Yes.
Would you agree that the effect of the use of these NDAs and their enforcement was to have a chilling effect on people or silence them from coming forward?
I apologize. If you want to define chilling, I'm not sure.
Oh, just that he would, in using these NDAs or trying to enforce them, would basically try to keep people silent.
That was the goal.
And nothing at the Trump organization was ever done unless it was run through President Donald Trump, correct?
That's 100% certain.
Okay. Mr. Cohen, do you believe that there are people out there today, either from the president's business or personal life, who are not coming forward to tell their stories of wrongdoing because of the president's use of NDAs against them?
I'm sorry, sir. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Sir, I have a couple other questions for you. When was the last communication with President Trump or someone acting on his behalf?
I don't have the specific date, but it was a while ago.
Okay. Do you have a general time frame?
I would suspect it was within 2 months post the raid of my my home.
Okay, so
hotel.
Early fall of last year, generally?
Generally.
And what did he or his agent communicate to you?
Unfortunately, this topic is actually something that's being investigated right now by the Southern District of New York, and I've been asked by them not to discuss and not to talk about these issues.
Fair enough. Is there any other wrongdoing or illegal act that you are aware of regarding Donald Trump that we haven't yet discussed today?
Yes, and again, those are part of the investigation that's currently being looked at by the Southern District of New York.
Sir, Congressman Cooper asked you about whether you were aware of any physical violence committed by President Trump. I just have a couple quick questions. Do you have any knowledge of President Trump abusing any controlled substances?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Do you have any knowledge of President Trump being delinquent on any alimony or child care payments?
I'm not aware of any of that.
Do you have any knowledge of President Trump arranging any health care procedures for any women not in his family?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Mr. Cloud.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Cohen, can you tell me the significance of May 6th?
Hearings we're listening to the hearings where Michael Cohen is testifying before the House of Representatives, and I think we just went to a Republican here just now. So we'll be back with more of the hearings, and as I said earlier, during the breaks we'll be taking your calls, but right now they're live.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
One of the really interesting things is how, as Michael Cohen pointed out, not a single Republican has asked a single question about Donald Trump. That's pretty amazing.
and your position in the Trump administration?
I did not have one.
Okay, in today's testimony, you said that you were not looking to work in the White House. The Southern District of New York, in their statement, their sentencing memo, says this: Cohen's criminal violations in the federal election laws were also stirred, like others' crimes, by his own ambition and greed. Cohen privately told friends, colleagues, and including seized text messages, that he expected to be given a prominent role in the new administration. When
This is
that did not
Congressman Cloud
materialize,
from
Cohen found a
Texas.
way
He's a Republican.
to monetize his relationship and access with the president. So, were they lying, or were you lying today?
I'm not saying it's a lie. I'm just saying it's not accurate. I did not want to go to the White House. I retained, and I brought an attorney in, and I sat with Mr. Trump, with him, for well over an hour, explaining the importance of having a personal attorney, that every president has had one, in order to handle matters like the matters I was dealing with, which included, say, like Summer Zervos, Stormy Daniels, was dealing with Stephanie Clifford, and other personal matters that needed.
Memo. Excuse me, this is my time. Thank you. I ask unanimous consent to submit the sentencing memo from the Southern District of New York for the record.
Without objections, ordered.
It's fine. All right, I'll get that to you in a second. Okay, this memo states that you committed 4 distinct federal crimes over a period of several years. You were motivated to do so by personal greed and repeatedly used your power to influence for deceptive ends. It goes on to say that they each involved, they were distinct in their harms, but bear a common set of characteristics, that they involved deception and were each motivated by personal greed and ambition. There's a lot we don't know in regards to this investigation, but here's what we do know. We know that you were expecting a job at the White House and didn't get it. You made millions lying about your close access to the president. You have a history of lying for personal gain, including that's banks, about your accountant, to law enforcement, your family, the Congress, the American people. The Southern District of New York, you've said that you did all this out of blind loyalty to Mr. Trump, but your sentencing memo states this: this was not an act out of blind loyalty, as Cohen suggests. Cohen was driven by a desire to further ingratiate himself with a potential future president for whose political success Cohen himself claimed credit for. Now, we're in a search for truth, and I don't know, Chairman, how we're supposed to ascertain the truth in this quagmire of a hearing when the best witness we can bring before this has already been convicted of lying before us. And what's sad is the American people have seen this play out before. We have people in prominent positions fail, and then a couple years later they get a book deal. Now, you're set to go to jail for a couple years. You come out with a multi-million book deal. That's not bad living. And so my question is will you today to commit to donate any further proceeds to book deals, to film reviews, to charity?
No.
Thank you. I yield my
Will,
time.
will the gentleman yield?
Now,
Will the gentleman yield?
Now, may I finish?
With the gentleman yield?
Yield to Mr. Meadows.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish?
Mr. Cohen.
May I finish my?
Mr. Cohen, he's yielded to me, and so
I didn't finish, sir, my response.
Listen, everything's been made.
Mr. Chairman, may I finish my response, please?
I'll let you respond, but let's answer his question, please.
Mr. Cohen, everything's been made of your lies in the past. I'm concerned about your lies today. Under your testimony just a few minutes ago, to me, you indicated that you had contracts with foreign entities, and yet we have a truth and testimony disclosure form which requires you to list those foreign contracts for the last 2 years, and you put NA on there. And it's a criminal offense to not have that accurately. So when were you lying? Either on the testimony to me earlier today or when you filled out the form?
Right now, this is
expired. Mr. Cohen, you may answer his question and then whatever you wanted to say on that.
There we go. Mark Meadows had to get a dig in.
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for his question. But as it
well, no, Mr. Chairman.
As it relates,
the gentleman is out of order. He said he does not have an answer.
Mr. Chairman, when we were in the majority, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, hold on.
Regular order. The gentleman has just said he doesn't have
when
an
they were
answer.
in the majority, they didn't want to know about this.
Over your time.
he's under oath to tell the truth. One of them is not accurate,
Again,
Mr. Chairman.
You'll have time to answer
Mr.
questions.
Chairman, just a question. Mr. Chairman, just a question.
Mr. Raskin. Mr. Raskin.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for your composure today.
This is Janie
Our
Raskin,
colleagues
the
are not
Democrat from,
upset
I believe, New
because
York.
You lied to Congress for the president.
Oh,
They're
from
upset
Maryland,
because
that's
you
right.
stopped lying to Congress for the president. Now, you've described the Trump campaign as a once-in-a-lifetime money-making opportunity, the greatest infomercial of all time, I think you said, and this may be the most trenchant observation of your whole testimony. Do you think the Trump campaign or presidency ever stopped being about making money for the president, his family, and his organization?
Yes.
When did it stop being that?
When he won the election.
And what did it become about at that point?
Then it had to be about figuring out what to do here in Washington.
Can you carefully explain to America how the hush money payments to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels worked? Can you carefully explain what catch and kill is?
Sure. I received a phone call regarding both Karen McDougal as well as Stormy Daniels, obviously at different times, stating that there were issues that were going to be damaging to Mr. Trump. With the Stormy Daniels, it started in 2011 when she wanted to have something removed from a website. And that was the first time I met Keith David. I spoke with Keith Davidson, her then acting attorney, and we were successful in having it taken down from the website. It wasn't until years later, by around the time of the campaign, did they come back and they ask, what are you going to do now, because she's back on the trail trying to sell the story. At which point in time, David Pecker, on behalf of the National Enquirer, reached out to her and her attorney in order to go take a look at lie detector test that would prove that she was telling the truth. They then contacted me and told me that she was telling the truth, at which point, again, all the time.
She took a lie detector test.
She allegedly took a lie detector test and was seen by an employee of the National Enquirer. At which point in time, I went straight into Mr. Trump's office and I explained why this time it's different than another time.
Okay, now when you say different than another time, were there other women paid sexual hush money by Donald Trump or his organization? Was this a standard operating practice?
No.
So you're not aware of any other cases where it had taken place?
I'm not aware of any other case that Mr. Trump paid. So which brings us to the Karen McDougal. He was supposed to pay. He was supposed to pay $125,000 for the life story of Karen McDougal. For whatever the reason may be, he elected not to pay it. David Pecker was very angry because there was also other monies that David had expended on his behalf. Unfortunately, David never got paid back for that either.
So David Pecker had done this in other cases of other mistresses or women?
Other circumstances, yes.
Okay.
Not all of them had to do with women.
Are you aware of anything that the President has done at home or abroad that may have subjected him to or may subject him to extortion or blackmail?
I am not, no.
Okay. Are you aware of any videotapes that may be the subject of extortion or blackmail?
I've heard about these tapes for a long time. I've had many people contact me over the years. I have no reason to believe that that tape exists.
In December 2015, Donald Trump was asked about his relationship with Felix Sater, a convicted felon and real estate developer, and he replied, "Felix Sater, boy, have to even think about it. I'm not that familiar with him." Why did Trump endeavor to hide his relationship with Felix Sater, and what was his relationship?
Well, he certainly had a relationship. Felix was a partner in a company called Bayrock that was involved in the
keep Michael up
Soho
as long as we
Hotel, as well as, I believe, the Trump Fort Lauderdale project.
Jamie Raskin
Why did he want to
is
distance
questioning
himself?
Michael
That's what
Cohen.
Mr. Trump
It's
does.
the Cohen
He
testimony. We'll come back with this after the
when
news break here at the
things
top of the
go
hour.
bad for someone.
Stick around. It's 58
And
minutes
at that point
past
in
the
time,
hour.
it was going bad for Mr. Sater.
You said you lied to Congress about Trump's negotiations to build his Moscow tower because he made it...
We say fight back!
over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. TV needs you. I mean, you know that, right? You're watching the show. Right now, everybody and his brother and sisters is at fundraising drive. We heard it on the radio yesterday, the local NPR station, the local Pacifica station. Everybody is in fund drive. It's spring. It's the beginning of a new year. It's also a political season when every politician on earth is asking for money. I get it that we're all I get letters from Donald Trump begging for money, right? Which I share with you on this program. I do that so you don't have to. But the bottom line is that Free Speech TV we're not hitting our goals. We haven't hit our goal any day yet so far in this fund drive. We are way behind, and we need your help. This network is really an important thing. This network is an important part of the media ecosphere, the landscape. I had this is not Congressman Pocan I'm speaking of, but I had a congressman on the show a while ago, and later on we were talking, and he said, I was just amazed. He said, I travel all around the country, and everywhere I go, people say to me, hey, I heard that you were on Thom Hartmann's program, or, Thom Hartmann said such and such, or whatever. Or, he was amazed. I'm not. I mean, not by way of bragging or anything, but Free Speech TV, I mean, we're on Dish, we're on DirecTV, we're on cable, we're on the internet. The things that have been accomplished by this little tiny network with a budget that's literally less than half of the annual paycheck of one of the evening MSNBC stars. This little network on this little budget literally reaches the entire country, especially in red states where people don't have easy access to cable, so they get satellite TV, maybe you, and they get satellite TV and there's skipping through the channels and, oh, what's this Free Speech TV thing? That sounds kind of cool. Check this out. And it's like, whoa, somebody's talking the truth? I mean, right? The almost shock that people experience when they see a television program on a national television network with millions of viewers going, on which you will hear somebody say, well, Richard Nixon committed treason to become president. So apparently did Ronald Reagan. George Herbert Walker Bush shouldn't have been president. When they did the recount in Florida, they found that Al Gore actually won the election. Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man. Well, that's becoming obvious to the country. But the rest of it, do you hear that on other television networks? I don't. Do you hear about the corruption in the White House on other television networks? How many lobbyists, how many billionaires are in the cabinet? How many lobbyists are heading up federal agencies right now? How they're auctioning off, our public lands, the Interior Department, how they're shutting down regulations that keep your children and grandchildren safe from the poisons that come out of the petro-billionaires' factories and refineries. I mean, you don't hear that on the other networks. You don't hear about the money that the petro-billionaires are pouring into the campaigns, that every single Republican who's going to be, going after Michael Cohen or anybody else, frankly, every single one of those Republicans is taking money from petro-billionaires and other billionaires whose really only interest is to continue polluting the planet and making a profit by ripping us off, essentially. You just don't hear it. You do hear So please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution now. We need your help. $20 gets you a flag lapel pin, a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV 6 sticker pack. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of my brand new book. It just became available on Amazon, but it's only available for pre-order. It won't be out until June. We're hoping, assuming that we'll get advance copies perhaps the last week of May, and I can get autographed book plates in them, and we can get them to you as an autographed copy of my brand new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which tells the true story of the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment was passed to preserve the slave patrols, specifically in Virginia and Georgia, although the Carolinas were also very concerned about that. But, you know, this is mostly the work of Patrick Henry, the guy who said, "Give me liberty or give me death," and was the biggest slaveholder in Virginia. Irony of ironies, huh?
1 minute.
This is, anyhow, that's that book, $72 for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. A $100 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt with a $200 gift, the Free Speech TV hoodie, with a $360 gift, everything I just mentioned, including my new book, although again with the caveat that it'll be a few months before you get it in the mail. They literally have not yet been printed. I haven't seen it yet. With a $500 gift, Louise and I are putting together another webinar. This is where you watch us in real time. You can ask questions, interact with us on the internet about dealing with resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma, and not just political stuff. And with a $1,000 gift, we have a meet and greet. You can come here to Portland, Oregon. You can sit right over there on the couch and watch the show for the last hour, and then we'll go next door and or down the street, and we'll have some lunch, and we'll have a great time. So call 877-378-8669 now, please. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
In fact, his office, when he left, became my office.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We've been listening for the last hour. We will continue to be listening as long as it's live to the live testimony of Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former lawyer and fixer. Really an important point. Michael Cohen, up until June of last year, was also the deputy finance chair for the Republican National Committee, something no Republicans have, nobody's mentioned actually, and that he was the vice president of the Trump Organization who had an office next door to Donald Trump. Back to Michael Cohen. Here it is.
His relationship to convicted Russian mobster Mr. Sater by a reporter for the Associated Press. He stated, quote, "Felix Sater, boy, I have to even think about it."
This is Congressman Rout. I believe he's a
quote,
Democrat.
"I'm not that familiar with him," unquote. Mr. Cohen, where would we find business records that explain the president's relationship to the convicted Russian mobster Felix Sater? Would those be in the Trump Organization's files?
They'd be in the Trump Organization's files. There would be CCs to Bayrock, which was the name of Mr. Sater's company. I suspect on Mr. Sater's email address, possibly hard files in possession of Mr. Sater.
And when you say in possession of the Trump Organization, where?
It depends upon who the attorney was that was working on it. Now it would probably be in a box, off-site. They have storage facility that they put old files.
In addition to convicted Russian mobster Sater, do you know of any other ties to convicted or alleged mobsters President Trump may have?
I am not aware.
Is it true that many people with ties to Russia ultimately bought condos in Trump properties, usually for cash? And if so, how many are we talking? 10, 20, 50?
I'm not, honestly, sir, I'm not aware of any. The statement that you're referring to, I believe, was made by either Eric or Don, and I don't agree with it.
So are you aware of any cash purchases by Russian oligarchs and family members of Trump properties?
I'm not aware of that. I can tell you when you say cash, if you mean walking in with a satchel of rubles? The answer is I've never seen that happen. I've never heard of it. I will tell you, when we sold Mr. Trump's property in Palm Beach, the home for $95 million, it came in by wire. And that came from Mr. Rybolovyev's bank account.
One other question. You also talked about President Trump doing negotiations throughout the campaign regarding the Trump Tower in Moscow. Was he directly involved in those negotiations? And if so, how do you know?
Well, the answer is yes. And as it relates to negotiations, it was merely follow-ups as to what's currently happening, what's happening with Russia, meaning he wanted me to give him a status report. The problem with this is that the project never advanced because they were unable, Mr. Sater was unable to provide me with proof that somebody owned or controlled a piece of property that we can actually build on.
The gentleman's time has expired. Mr. Amash.
Mr. Cohen, why did Mr. Trump choose to hire you?
This is Justin Amash, the Republican from Michigan.
Why did he trust you with the various tasks that you performed for him?
I don't know, sir. You would have to ask him that question.
Well, we've heard here that you have bad character. You've admitted to that over the years. You have no idea why he chose to hire you.
In 2006, I was asked by Don Jr. to come meet with his father. I did. He then followed up by asking if I would take a look at an issue that was occurring at Trump World Tower with the board. I went ahead and I looked into it, and I found that the statements that the board were making about Mr. Trump were inaccurate. And the reason Don came to me is because I had an apartment there for investment. My parents had an apartment there. My in-laws lived there. Friends of mine, we all bought as a big block from a brokerage company. We got a good price on each unit. And we ultimately turned over the board, and I became actually the treasurer of the board because the out-of-control spending was going to put the building into bankruptcy. And I was proud to say that within a year, we had plus $1 million versus minus 1.3. At the end of the day, Mr. Trump appreciated that, and he tasked me with something else. It was to handle a problem that Don Jr. had created in terms of a business, a license deal, and we resolved that. And then on top of that, the third time, Mr. Trump had asked me to take a look at the third Trump Entertainment Resort Chapter 11 reorganization, because he had a series of questions that he wanted answered. And I read these two stacked books, gave him the answers that he needed, and with that, the next time I was sitting in his office, and he asked me if I was happy at the sleepy old firm that I was with. I said yes. He said, would you rather work for me? And I asked if you offer me a job. And he said, yeah. And we negotiated, and I actually never went back to my office.
All right. Well, you've suggested that the president sometimes communicates his wishes indirectly. For example, you said, quote, Mr. Trump did not directly tell me to lie to Congress. That's not how he operates, end quote. Can you explain how he does this?
Sure. It would be no different if I said, that's the nicest looking tie I've ever seen, isn't it? What are you going to do? You're going to fight with him? The answer is no. So you say, yeah, it's the nicest looking tie I've ever seen. That's how he speaks. He doesn't give you questions. He doesn't give you orders. He speaks in a code. And I understand the code because I've been around him for a decade.
And it's your impression that others who work for him understand the code as well?
Most people, yes.
Mr. Cohen, I don't know whether we should believe you today, but I'm going to ask you this one last question. What is the truth that you know President Trump fears most?
That's a tough question, sir. I don't have an answer for that one. What does he fear most?
What's the truth that he fears most? From your perspective. And again, I don't know whether we should believe you here today, but
it's a tough question, sir. I don't even know how to answer that question.
Let me ask you this. What principles have you chosen to follow in your life? And do you wish to follow different principles now?
I've always tried to be a good person. I've tried to be a great friend. There were many, I think over 40 statements written in my support to the sentencing judge. I have friends who I treat incredibly well that I know for over 40 years, and I treat people after 40 minutes the same exact way. Am I perfect? No. Do I make mistakes? Yes. Have I made mistakes? Absolutely. I'm going to pay the consequences for it. But all I would like to do is be able to get my life back, to protect my wife and my children, support and grow old. That's pretty much where I'd like to be.
And you feel you're following a different set of principles now than you followed throughout your life?
I do, and I'm trying. I'm trying very hard. I thank you for your questions. Some of the other ones really make it difficult to try to, show some redemption. But I am trying. I am trying.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill. Ms. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to mention really quick a clarification on the truth and testimony form. The mention was around whether it talks about foreign entities at all. And the question is, in fact, whether witnesses have any contracts or payments originating with a foreign government. It does not cover all foreign entities, just foreign government entities. So, Mr. Cohen, what I'd like to ask you to do is review this issue over lunch with your attorneys. And if you need to amend your form, we ask that you do that before the conclusion of today's hearing. Also, I represent a purple district. I did not come here for partisan bickering. In fact, I actively wanted to avoid it. So when I ask these questions today, it is not as someone who has a vendetta against the president. It's as someone who comes from generations of service members who swore an oath to obey the orders of the President of the United States, and who, along with myself and every single other person up here, swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. My forefathers served their country, they served their commander-in-chief, and they served the idea that America is free and just, and that the law of the land rules us all, especially those in the highest levels of our government. So I ask these questions to help determine whether our very own president committed felony crimes while serving in the Oval Office, including efforts to conceal payments that were intended to mislead the public and influence the outcome of an election. I hope to God that is not the case. So, Mr. Cohen, on January 22nd, 2018, just days after the Wall Street Journal broke the story that Mr. Cohen paid $130,000 to Stephanie Clifford to silence her during the 2016 presidential campaign, a nonprofit watchdog called Common Cause filed a complaint with the Department of Justice and FEC, alleging the payment to Ms. Clifford may have represented an illegal in-kind contribution to the Trump campaign. I ask that their complaint be entered into the record. On February 13th, 2018, Mr. Cohen, you sent a statement to the reporters that said, quote, I used my own personal funds to facilitate a payment of $130,000 to Ms. Stephanie Clifford, and neither the Trump Organization nor the Trump campaign was party to the transaction with Ms. Clifford, and neither reimbursed me for the payment either directly or indirectly. Was the statement false?
The statement is not false. I purposefully left out Mr. Trump individually from that statement.
Okay. Why did you say it that way?
Because that's what was discussed to do between myself, Mr. Trump, and Alan Weisselberg.
So it was carefully worded?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Mr. Cohen, a reporter for the magazine Vanity Fair has reported that she interviewed you the very next day on February 14th, 2018, about the payment and reimbursement. And she wrote, quote, last February 14th, I interviewed Cohen in his office about the statement he gave the FEC in which he said Trump didn't know about the Stormy payment or reimburse him for it. Do you recall this meeting with the reporter?
I do.
The reporter also wrote, Trump called while I was there. I couldn't hear much, but he wanted to go over what the public messaging would be. Is that accurate?
It is.
Did the president call you while you were having a meeting with the reporter?
Yes.
Did the president call you to coordinate on public messaging about the payments to Ms. Clifford's in or around February 2018?
Yes.
What did the president ask or suggest that you say about the payments or reimbursements?
He was not knowledgeable of these reimbursements, and he wasn't knowledgeable of my actions.
He asked you to say that?
Yes, ma'am.
We're listening to Michael Cohen
in addition to the personal check
acknowledging the
for
lies that
$35,000
Donald
in
Trump
July
asked him
2017,
to make.
Is there additional corroborating?
This is pretty amazing. She's basically, as the President of the United States a felon? We'll be back with more of
directly
this right after
reimbursed
that.
you hush money as part of a criminal
This is the
scheme
Thom
to
Hartmann
violate.
Program.
We're listening to the Michael Cohen hearings. We'll be right back.
As I stated before, one had 2 checks.
And you have copies of all of those.
I can get copies. I'd have to go to the bank.
So we will
Yes.
be able to get copies of all 11 checks that Mr. Trump provided to you as part of this criminal scheme.
It's either from his personal account, as what was demonstrated in the exhibit, or it would come from the Donald J. Trump account, the trust account.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I yield back the remainder of my time.
Mr. Gibbs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I'm just been sitting here. I'm new to the committee. I'm not an attorney. Sometimes your answers, you're either competent or are a liar. I think maybe I could be a better attorney. I don't know. I'm looking through this. You come in here and you rail on the President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief, while he's over across the Pacific Ocean trying to negotiate a deal to make this world safer. And, Mr. Chairman, just having this committee at this time when the Commander-in-Chief's out of the country is just I think, is a new president. But you call him a racist, a cheat, and you know, you're attacking his character. And I've been with the president a little bit, and I didn't see that in the president. I see a president who's very sincere. He's trying to make this country better for every American. And for you to come in here and do that, this is repentance on your part, is really unbelievable. Real repentance would be go serve your time and don't come back here and make allegations towards a man you can't substantiate. Now, I'm looking here from the remarks from the prosecutor of the Southern District of New York. False statements to Bank 3, which Cohen pleaded guilty, was far from an isolated event. It was one of a long series of self-serving lies Cohen told in numerous financial institutions. Earlier in your testimony, I think I heard you say that only there was a home equity loan, but apparently the prosecutors in New York think that there was other financial things that you did. You also, they said, managed to commit a series of crimes, all withholding himself out as a licensed attorney and an upstanding member of the bar. Also, the Southern District prosecutor said that, wrote that your consciousness of wrongdoing is fleeting, that your remorse is minimal, and that your instinct is to blame others is strong. So I'm kind of left here. Why? You worked for the president for 10 years before he was president. If you have any sense of integrity that you're trying to tell us you have now, and it was that bad, why didn't you leave? You weren't stuck there because of financial reasons. You had ways to leave. You're an attorney. And so that's just kind of, you know, the president's working tirelessly, and you come and make these allegations, and you could have left any time you want. It looks like to me you're trying to save face. And with the other questions that came out here was, looks like to me you're going to have a very lucrative deal at some point in your life, because you don't look like you're any close to retirement, but you're going to have some type of lucrative deal. And so one of my questions is, and it's come up a little bit, talks with you and your attorney, and there's been talks about members of Congress and staff, and you said there was some discussions. Was any of those discussions that you or your attorneys had with members of Congress or staff or prosecutors to get considerations to favor or other considerations to you or your family in the future?
No, the conversations were about the topics, and because there were things that originally we could not speak about at the request of whether it was the special counsel's office or the Southern District or any of the other agencies, including the House Select Intel or the Senate Select Intel. Sir, just for your personal edification here, I was asked to come here. Your chairman sent a letter to Mr. Davis, and I accepted, so I'm here voluntarily. And
I understand that.
Sir, and if you believe that I'm here...
I understand. I think this is political theater.
Sir, if you believe it's not political theater for me, and I take no pleasure in saying anything negative about Mr. Trump. You've met him for a short period of time. I've been with him for over a decade. I've traveled with him internationally. I've spent dinners with him. It doesn't make me feel good about what's going on here. And as far as saving face, I'm not sure how being in front of the world, being called
well,
a
this,
cheat,
this world today, with these lucrative book deals, movies that come about, I think you'll be pretty... I yield the rest of my time to the chairman, ranking member.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Earlier you said you started the campaign?
That's correct, in 2011.
You started the campaign for President of the United States for Donald Trump?
I certainly did, sir.
Now that's news.
ShouldTrumpRun.com.
Wow.
2011 was my idea. I saw a document in the newspaper that said, who'd you vote for in 2012? 6% of the people said Michael Cohen. 6% of the people turned around and said they'd vote for Donald Trump.
The reason Donald Trump is president is because
So I brought it into his office and I said to him, Mr. Trump, take a look at this. And he goes, well, wouldn't that be great? And with that is where it all started.
Yeah. Okay. Sure, he had never thought of anything like that until you came.
No, I didn't
Let me
say
ask you
that
one
he
question.
had
I got 8
acted on it.
seconds. I got 8 seconds. What did you talk to Mr. Schiff about?
I spoke to Mr. Schiff about topics were going to be raised at the upcoming hearing.
Whoa. Not just what time to show up, actually what you're going to talk about?
The gentleman's time has expired.
Wow.
Mr. Sarbanes. Mr. Sarbanes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Cohen. I know the other side is suggesting that you are an incorrigible liar and that you're lying here today. I can't think of anything you have to gain at this point from lying. I mean, they talk about book deals and other things that you want to do, but I see a lot more that you could lose by telling the truth today, given the threats and other things that have been made against you and your family. So that's how I'm interpreting it. And of course, you brought documents with you as well to bolster the credibility of your testimony. I did want to go back to an earlier line of questioning regarding the preparation of your testimony before you came before the Intelligence Committee. You've talked about a meeting at the White House where the testimony was being reviewed. I think you said that there was at least one White House attorney, Jay Sekulow, who was there, and you acknowledged that there were some edits that were made to your testimony. So on that topic, who at the White House reviewed your testimony?
I don't know the answer to that. The document was originally created by myself, along with my attorney at the time from McDermott, Will and Emery, and there was a joint defense agreement, so the document circulated around. I believe it was also reviewed by Abby Lowell, who represents Ivanka and Jared Kushner.
Why did you provide the testimony to the White House?
It was pursuant to the joint defense agreement that we were all operating under.
Mm-hmm. What were the edits that came back substantively on the testimony?
I'm sorry, I don't know, sir. I'd have to take a look at the document.
Uh-huh. Did you have a reaction to why there might not have been?
We're listening to the Michael Cohen hearings before the House Oversight Committee, and we'll be back with more of that in just a few moments. So please stick around here on the Thom Hartmann Program. We are carrying the hearings live, courtesy of C-SPAN, and we'll be right back. TV needs you. I mean, 'cause you know that, right? You're watching the show right now. Everybody and his brother and sisters is a fundraising drive. We heard it on the radio yesterday. The local NPR station, the local Pacifica station. Everybody is in fund drive. It's spring. It's the beginning of a new year. It's also a political season when every politician on earth is asking for money. I get it that we're all being. I mean, I get letters from Donald Trump begging for money, right? Which I share with you on this program. You know, I do that so you don't have to. But the bottom line is that Free Speech TV is we're not hitting our goals. We haven't hit our goal any day yet so far in this fund drive. We are way behind, and we need your help. This network is really an important thing. This network is an important part of the media ecosphere, the landscape. I had this is not Congressman Pocan I'm speaking of, but I had a congressman on the show a while ago, and later on we were talking, and he said, I was just amazed. He said, I travel all around the country, and everywhere I go, people say to me, hey, I heard that you were on Thom Hartmann's program, or, Thom Hartmann said such and such, or whatever. Or, he was amazed. I'm not. I mean, not by way of bragging or anything, but Free Speech TV, I mean, we're on Dish, we're on DirecTV, we're on cable, we're on the internet. The things that have been accomplished by this little tiny network with a budget that's literally less than half of the annual paycheck of one of the evening MSNBC stars. This little network on this little budget literally reaches the entire country, especially in red states where people don't have easy access to cable, so they get satellite TV, maybe you, and they get satellite TV and there's skipping through the channels and, oh, what's this Free Speech TV thing? That sounds kind of cool. Check this out. And it's like, whoa, somebody's talking the truth? I mean, right? The almost shock that people experience when they see a television program on a national television network with millions of viewers going, on which you will hear somebody say, well, Richard Nixon committed treason to become president. So apparently did Ronald Reagan. George Herbert Walker Bush shouldn't have been president. When they did the recount in Florida, they found that Al Gore actually won the election. Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man. Well, that's becoming obvious to the country. But the rest of it, do you hear that on other television networks? I don't. Do you hear about the corruption in the White House on other television networks? How many lobbyists, how many billionaires are in the cabinet? How many lobbyists are heading up federal agencies right now? How they're auctioning off, our public lands, the Interior Department, how they're shutting down regulations that keep your children and grandchildren safe from the poisons that come out of the petro-billionaires' factories and refineries. I mean, you don't hear that on the other networks. You don't hear about the money that the petro-billionaires are pouring into the campaigns, that every single Republican who's going to be, going after Michael Cohen or anybody else, frankly, every single one of those Republicans is taking money from petro-billionaires and other billionaires whose really only interest is to continue polluting the planet and making a profit by ripping us off, essentially. You just don't hear it. You do hear. So please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution now. We need your help. $20 gets you a flag lapel pin, a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV 6-sticker pack. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of my brand new book. It just became available on Amazon, but it's only available for pre-order. It won't be out until June. We're hoping, assuming that we'll get advance copies perhaps the last week of May, and I can get autographed book plates in them, and we can get them to you as an autographed copy of my brand new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which tells the true story of the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment was passed to preserve the slave patrols, specifically in Virginia and Georgia, although the Carolinas were also very concerned about that. But, this is mostly the work of Patrick Henry, the guy who said, give me liberty or give me death, and was the biggest slaveholder in Virginia. Irony of ironies, huh? This is, anyhow, that's that book, $72 for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. A $100 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt with a $200 gift, the Free Speech TV hoodie with a $360 gift, everything I just mentioned, including my new book, although, again, with the caveat that it'll be a few months before you get it in the mail. They literally have not yet been printed. I haven't seen it yet. With a $500 gift, Louise and I are putting together another webinar. This is where you watch us in real time. You can ask questions, interact with us on the internet about dealing with resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma, and not just political stuff. And with a $1,000 gift, we have a meet and greet. You can come here to Portland, Oregon. You can sit right over there on the couch and watch the show for the last hour, and then we'll go next door and we'll have her down the street and we'll have some lunch and we'll have a great time. So call 877-378-8669 now, please. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
instinct that compares you to many of the men that I've arrested during the course of my career. Mr. Chairman.
And we are right back here with the Cohen hearings. He is being interrogated by, I believe, a Republican congressman who's a former prosecutor or police officer. Here we go.
Congress of the American people has manifested in the way that it obviously is. This is an attempt to injure our president and lay some sort of soft cornerstone for future impeachment proceedings. This is the full intent of the majority. I yield my remaining 30 seconds to the ranking member.
Mr. Cohen, earlier you said the United States Southern District of New York is not accurate in that statement.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Earlier you said that the United States Southern District of New York Attorney's Office, that statement is not accurate. You said it's not a lie, you said it's not accurate. You stand by that?
Yes, I did not want a role in the new administration.
So the court's wrong?
Sir, can I finish, please? I got exactly the role that I wanted. There is no shame in being personal attorney to the president. I got exactly what I wanted. I asked Mr. Trump for that job, and he gave it to me.
All I'm asking, if I could, and I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman, you're saying that statement from the Southern District of New York attorneys is wrong.
I'm saying I didn't write it, and it's not accurate.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Welch.
Thank you. One of the most significant events in the last presidential campaign, of course, was the dump of emails stolen from the Democratic National Committee, dumped by WikiLeaks. Mr. Cohen, during your opening statement, which was at the height of the election, you testified you were actually meeting with Donald Trump in July 2016 when Roger Stone happened to call and tell Mr.
This is Congressman
Trump
Peter
that he had
Welch
just
from
spoken
Vermont,
to Julian
the
Assange.
Democrat.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. And you said that Mr. Assange told Mr. Trump about an upcoming, quoting your opening statement, quote, massive dump of emails that would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. Wow. So I want to ask you about Roger Stone's phone call to the president. First of all, was that on speakerphone? Is that what you indicated?
Yes. So Mr. Trump has a black speakerphone that sits on his desk. He uses it quite often because with all the number of phone calls he gets.
Now, in January of this year, 2019, the New York Times asked President Trump if he ever spoke to Roger Stone about these stolen emails, and President Trump answered, and I quote, "No, I didn't. I never did." Was that statement by President Trump true?
No, it's not accurate.
And can you please describe for us, to the best of your recollection, you were present, exactly what Mr. Stone said to Mr. Trump?
It was a short conversation, and he said, Mr. Trump, I just want to let you know that I just got off the phone with Julian Assange, and in a couple of days, there's going to be a massive dump of emails that's going to severely hurt the Clinton campaign.
And was Mr. Trump and Mr. Stone aware of where those emails came from?
That I'm not aware of.
Did Mr. Trump ever suggest then or later to call the FBI to report this breach?
He never expressed that to me.
Did the president at that time or ever since, in your knowledge, indicate an awareness that this conduct was wrong?
No.
The reason I ask is because on July 22nd, on the eve of the Democratic Convention, WikiLeaks published, as you know, the 20,000 leaked internal DNC emails. Could your meeting with Mr. Trump have been before that date?
Yes.
So Mr. Trump was aware of the upcoming dump before it actually happened?
Yes.
Right. And is there any record?
Though, sir, I don't know whether he knew or not, and I don't believe he did, what the substance of the dump was going to be, only that there was going to be a dump of emails.
And he was aware of that before the dump occurred, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And are there any records that would corroborate the day of this meeting, calendars perhaps?
I'm not in possession, but I believe, again, this is part of the special counsel, and they probably best suited to corroborate that information.
Was anyone else present in the room during the call?
I don't recall for this one, no, sir.
Is there anyone else the committee should talk to about the president's knowledge of the WikiLeaks email dump?
Well, again, when he called, Ronograph yelled out to Mr. Trump, "Rogers on line 1," which was regular practice.
And that's his assistant?
That's his, yes.
All right. And during a news conference on July 27th, 2016, then candidate Trump publicly appealed to Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails and make them public. He stated, and I quote, "Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing." Now, going back to Mr. Stone's phone call to the president, do you recall if Mr. Trump had knowledge of the WikiLeaks dump at the time of his direct appeal to Russia?
I am not.
But the call with Mr. Stone, you believe, was before
Yes.
this 27th?
Yes, I'm sorry. If you're, I thought you were talking about a different set of documents that got dumped. So I was in Mr. Trump's office, was either July 18th or 19th, and yes, he went ahead. I don't know if the 35,000 or 30,000 emails was what he was referring to, but he certainly had knowledge.
All right, thank you. Just
Yes,
one
sir.
last question. Mr. Raskin had been asking you some questions, and one of the things in your answer was that Mr. Pecker expended other monies to protect Mr. Trump. Can you elaborate on what some of those other activities were?
Sure. There was the story about Mr. Trump having a love child with an employee, and actually the husband of that employee works for the company as well. And there was a elevator operator who claims that he overheard the conversation taking place between one of Mr. Trump's other executives and somebody, and he ended up paying like $15,000 in order to buy that story to find out whether it was true or not. And that's just one example of things that David had done over the years. It was the reason why in the recording, when David was looking to become the CEO of Time magazine, we were concerned about, we'll call it the treasure trove of documents that had been created over the years, that if he left, somebody could open up the key to a drawer and find all this information. So we were going to look to buy all of those life rights and so on.
Gentleman's time expired. Mr. Norman.
Mr. Cohen, thank you for testifying. I join Congressman Higgins in feeling for your family. They have no part in this. You know, I've heard all the testimony, and I'm trying to
This is
decide
Republican
what
Congressman
place
Norman.
to decide. Are you really sorry for what you did, or you just got caught? And the thing that amazed me is that in your opening statement, which, let me quote, "Last fall, I pled guilty in federal court to felonies for the benefit of, at the direction of, and in coordination with individual one." Was that President?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your crimes were of your own to benefit yourself.
Some of them, yes.
No, go through all the ones with the real estate, with the banks. On your HELOC loan, you failed to disclose more than $20 million in debt. You failed to disclose $70,000 in monthly payments. On your $14 million line of credit, you failed to disclose that you had drawn on that. So this was all for yourself. This wasn't for the benefit of President Trump. This was to benefit Michael Cohen. So that's my question. Did you just get caught? And you worked for this man for 10 years, Mr. Cohen. You came in here with these, he's a con man. He's a cheat. This is the very man that, didn't you wiretap him illegally? Did you not wiretap President Trump without his knowledge?
I did record Mr. Trump in a conversation, yes.
Is that lawyer-client privilege? Is that something that an honest guy would do, an honest lawyer?
I actually never thought that this was going to be happening and that recording even existed. I had forgotten.
But you did it.
Yes, I did.
Have you ever...
I had a reason for doing it.
What was your reason?
Because I knew he wasn't going to pay that money, and David Pecker had already chewed me out on multiple occasions regarding other monies that he expended.
But this is a man that you trusted, you take a bullet for, you secretly recorded. Let me ask you this, Mr. Cohen. Have you legally or illegally recorded other clients?
I have recordings of people, yes.
Legally or illegally?
I believe that they're legal.
Did you tell them?
In New York State, you don't have to do that.
So you didn't tell them?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Sometimes I also use the recordings for contemporaneous note-taking instead of writing it down. I find it easier.
If the shoe were reversed, would you like your trusted lawyer recording you?
I probably would not, no.
No, sir. It's untrustworthy. It's something people just would not do. Now, your bank loans that I just ran down, did you ever default on any of these loans?
No, sir.
So the bank didn't take any loss?
No bank has. I am not in default. I've never filed a bankruptcy. The HELOC you're referring to, I replaced that from a different HELOC, paid it off. I owe no banks any money.
How about your medallion taxi cab? Did you have to sell that?
Well, the ones in Chicago, yes, I do have to sell. However, New York, the answer is no, I don't. And the industry is going through a major correction because of ride sharing. It's changed a lot of things.
We're listening to Michael Cohen being interviewed between before the House Oversight Committee, the U.S. House of Representatives. We will continue with this, and when they take a break, we'll pick up your phone calls and have a conversation about it. It's 45 minutes past the hour.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And I believe we're going to skip talk radio news today. We're going to just go right back to the hearings. Stick around.
Not for me.
It's by law. If they suspect you of lying, which you admitted to, if they suspect you of maybe not being able to make a loan payment, they have to have a loan loss reserve that's 125% of what you. If it's $20 million, they have to post in their account $20 million plus. So they get no interest on it. And you know who pays for that? The American public who deals with that bank.
Yes, but sir, I'm not in default, and I'm current on each and every one of those medallion loans. And I've never owed any money to First Republic Bank. In fact, at the time that I had the HELOC, I had more cash sitting in that same bank than the HELOC and my mortgage combined.
Have you ever been to Prague?
I've never been to Prague.
Never have?
I've never been to the Czech Republic.
You'll balance my time.
Ms. Spear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Cohen. On page 5 of your statement, you say, and I quote, "You need to know that Mr. Trump's personal lawyers reviewed and edited my statement to Congress about the timing of the Moscow Tower negotiations." Who were those attorneys?
Jay Sekulow from the White House?
Yes.
Jay Sekulow, I believe Abby Lowell as well.
And you have a copy of your original statement that you can provide to the committee?
I can try to get that for you.
All right, if you would do that.
This is Congresswoman Jackie Spear, I believe, of California.
For the Moscow Tower was in the fall of 2015, correct?
Correct.
Was there an expiration date on that letter of intent?
There was no expiration
So
date.
it could technically still be in effect today?
Oh, no, it's been terminated.
It has been terminated?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Mr. Trump tell you to offer Vladimir Putin a free penthouse?
No, ma'am.
So where does
that was Felix Sater. It was a marketing stunt that he spoke about.
So Felix Sater had suggested to you that Mr. Trump offer a penthouse to Mr. Putin?
Yes, because it would certainly drive up the price per square foot, no different than in any condo where they start listing celebrities that live in the property.
In 2016, did you travel to Europe?
Yes.
Did you meet with persons associated with the Moscow Tower project?
No.
It was for personal? Or?
Personal. My daughter was studying at Queen Mary in London.
So you did not meet with any Russians?
No.
There is an elevator tape that has been referenced as a catch and kill product. It was evidently of Mr. Trump and a woman, presumably Mrs. Trump, is that correct?
Are we talking about in Moscow or the Trump Tower elevator tape?
There's an elevator tape that went up for auction, ostensibly in 2016, is that correct?
Yes, I've heard about this.
And who is on that tape?
It's Mr. Trump with Melania.
And what happened in that tape?
Well, the story goes that he struck Melania while in that elevator, because there's a camera inside, which I'm not so sure. Actually, I'm certain it's not true. I've heard about that tape for years. I've known 4 or 5 different people, including folks from AMI, who have
But there was some
claimed.
tape that went up for auction, correct?
I don't believe that auction was real, and I don't believe I don't believe Mr. Trump ever struck Mrs. Trump, ever. I don't believe it.
And are you aware of anyone purchasing that tape then?
I don't believe it was ever
So you never
purchased.
saw this tape?
No, ma'am, and I know several people who went to go try to purchase it for catch and kill purpose. It doesn't exist.
right.
Mr. Trump would never, in my opinion, that's not
Good to
something
know.
that he
Good
is
to
not.
know. Is there a love child?
There is not, to the best of my
So
knowledge.
you would pay off someone to not
It wasn't me, ma'am.
report-
It was AMI. It was David Pecker.
So he paid off someone about a love child that doesn't exist.
Correct. It was about $15,000.
Okay. How many times did Mr. Trump ask you to threaten an individual or entity on his behalf?
Quite a few times.
50 times?
More.
100 times?
More.
200 times?
More.
500 times?
Probably. Over the 10 years.
Over the 10 years, he asked you.
And when you say threaten, I'm talking with litigation or an argument with
Intimidation.
a nasty reporter that is writing an article.
What do you know about, let's go to your tapes. You said there's probably 100 tapes,
Voice recordings,
voice recordings. And will you make them available to the committee?
if you would really like them.
Did Mr. Trump tape
don't you
conversations?
have to gavel that, sir?
We would.
Sorry.
Mr. Trump, did Mr. Trump tape any conversations?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Were you involved in the $25 million settlement to Trump University?
I had a role in that, yes.
Who paid the settlement?
I believe it was Mr. Trump.
And
I
we're
don't
back
know
with
the
the,
answer. to
You
that.
don't know the answer, but you were involved in the
Yes, in a
negotiations?
different aspect.
There's some reference to a businessman in Kansas being involved in that. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
All right. Finally, in my 13 seconds left, what do you want your children to know?
That I'm sorry for everything, and I'm sorry for the pain that I've caused them. And I wish I can go back in time.
Thank you. I yield back.
Young lady's time has expired. To the members of the committee, before we go to Ms. Miller, so that you can properly plan. There's a vote apparently coming up in about 10 to 20 minutes. And what we will do is we will recess, and we will come back, listen up, 30 minutes after the last vote begins. Got that? Not it ends. 30 minutes after it begins, and we'll do that promptly. All right? All right, Ms. Miller.
I am very disappointed to have you in front of this committee today. Quite frankly, this isn't the reason
As you can tell, this is a
people of West
Republican
Virginia sent me
congresswoman.
to Congress.
Mrs.
I find
Mrs.
this
Miller.
hearing not in the best interest of the American people. This is another
She's a Republican
political
from West
game
Virginia.
with the sole purpose of discrediting the president. If it was not already obvious, there are members here with a singular goal in Congress: to impeach President Trump. To achieve this goal, they will waste not only precious taxpayer dollars, but also time in this committee and Congress as a whole. In fact, they will go so far as to bring a convicted felon in front of our committee. We are supposed to take what you say, Mr. Cohen, at this time about President Trump as the truth. But you're about to go to prison for lying. How can we believe anything you say? The answer is we can't. This begs the question, why are those in the majority holding this hearing? I am appalled. We could be focused on actual issues that are facing America, like border security, neonatal abstinence syndrome, or improving our nation's crumbling infrastructure. Instead, the Democrats are trying to grasp at straws. Let's talk about this witness. From his sentencing hearing in the Southern District of New York, Judge Pauley stated, Mr. Cohen pled guilty to a veritable smorgasbord of fraudulent conduct, willful tax evasion, making false statements to a financial institution, illegal campaign contributions, and making false statements to Congress. Each of the crimes involved deception, and each appears to have been motivated by personal greed and ambition. This is who we have in front of us today in our committee, someone who is about to be sent to prison for 3 years for evading his taxes, deceiving a financial institution, lying to Congress, among other counts. One of the most appalling facts about this hearing is that Mr. Cohen has used his experiences with President Trump both before and after he was elected for his own greed and profit. I'd like some yes or no answers. Isn't it true you tried to sell a book about your time with President Trump entitled Trump Revolution, From the Tower to the White House, Understanding Donald J. Trump?
Yes, that happened early on when I was still even part, I believe, of the RNC.
And this book deal, which you had with Hatchet Books, was worth around $500,000. Isn't that correct?
No more, ma'am.
How much more?
I think it was about $750.
Wow. Mr. Cohen,
I did turn it down.
given that you continue to profit from publicly discussing your time with Mr. Trump, I worry that this committee hearing the majority has given you will only serve as a platform for you to continue to lie and sensationalize and exaggerate wherever it suits you. Do you plan to pursue another book deal about your experiences?
Yes.
I would presume this book would be a little different than your latest pitch, but your new angle might please some new fans. Anything to sell books. Mr. Chairman, we've canceled hearings on child separation and on other issues that are close to my heart for this media circus. What a waste of time and money for a man who has gladly exploited the name of the president to promote his own name and fill his own pockets. It pains me that we are sitting here adding another chapter to his book. Thank you, and I yield the remainder of my time to Mr. Jordan.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Earlier, Mr. Cohen, the gentlelady from California talked about this this tape.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Earlier, the gentlelady from California talked about this tape, this elevator tape that you said does not exist.
That's correct. I do not believe it exists.
But is it also your testimony that the Trump team was willing to pay to make sure a story about a non-existent tape never became public?
No, sir, that's not what I said.
They were willing to stop a false tape.
This is Jim Jordan, the wholly owned subsidiary of the fossil fuel industry.
On the market, and that it
oh
existed.
man, this is amazing.
So
We're listening to the House Oversight Committee's hearings of interviews with Michael Cohen. It's going to continue throughout the day. Although they're going to, in a few minutes, they're going to take a break. So we're going to have some time to talk when we come back from the news here. So give us a shout. Your thoughts on what you're seeing and hearing.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you, and it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff, and you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great. TV needs you. I mean, you know that, right? You're watching the show. Right now, everybody and his brother and sisters is at fundraising drive. We heard it on the radio yesterday, the local NPR station, the local Pacifica station. Everybody is in fund drive. It's spring. It's the beginning of a new year. It's also a political season when every politician on earth is asking for money. I get it that we're all being, I get letters from Donald Trump begging for money, right? Which I share with you on this program. I do that so you don't have to. But the bottom line is that Free Speech TV we're not hitting our goals. We haven't hit our goal any day yet so far in this fund drive. We are way behind, and we need your help. This network is really an important thing. This network is an important part of the media ecosphere, the landscape. I had this is not Congressman Pocan I'm speaking of, but I had a congressman on the show a while ago, and later on we were talking, and he said, I was just amazed. He said, I travel all around the country, and everywhere I go, people say to me, hey, I heard that you were on Thom Hartmann's program, or, Thom Hartmann said such and such, or whatever. Or, he was amazed. I'm not. I mean, not by way of bragging or anything, but Free Speech TV, we're on Dish, we're on DirecTV, we're on cable, we're on the internet. The things that have been accomplished by this little tiny network with a budget that's literally less than half of the annual paycheck of one of the evening MSNBC stars. This little network on this little budget literally reaches the entire country, especially in red states where people don't have easy access to cable, so they get satellite TV, maybe you, and they get satellite TV and they're skipping through the channels and, oh, what's this Free Speech TV thing? That sounds kind of cool. Check this out. And it's like, whoa, somebody's talking the truth? I mean, right? The almost shock that people experience when they see a television program on a national television network with millions of viewers going, on which you will hear somebody say, well, Richard Nixon committed treason to become president. So apparently did Ronald Reagan. George Herbert Walker Bush shouldn't have been president. When they did the recount in Florida, they found that Al Gore actually won the election. Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man. Well, that's becoming obvious to the country. But the rest of it, do you hear that on other television networks? I don't. Do you hear about the corruption in the White House on other television networks? How many lobbyists, how many billionaires are in the cabinet? How many lobbyists are heading up federal agencies right now? How they're auctioning off, our public lands, the Interior Department, how they're shutting down regulations that keep your children and grandchildren safe from the poisons that come out of the petro-billionaires' factories and refineries. You don't hear that on the other networks. You don't hear about the money that the petro-billionaires are pouring into the campaigns, that every single Republican who's going to be, going after Michael Cohen or anybody else, frankly, every single one of those Republicans is taking money from petro-billionaires and other billionaires whose really only interest is to continue polluting the planet and making a profit by ripping us off, essentially. You just don't hear it. You do hear. So please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution now. We need your help. $20 gets you a flag lapel pin, a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV 6-sticker pack. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of my brand new book. It just became available on Amazon, but it's only available for pre-order. It won't be out until June. We're hoping, assuming that we'll get advance copies perhaps the last week of May, and I can get autographed book plates in them, and we can get them to you as an autographed copy of my brand new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which tells the true story of the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment was passed to preserve the slave patrols, specifically in Virginia and Georgia, although the Carolinas were also very concerned about that. But, you know, this is mostly the work of Patrick Henry, the guy who said, "Give me liberty or give me death," and was the biggest slaveholder in Virginia. Irony of ironies, huh? 1 minute. This is, anyhow, that's that book, $72 for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. A $100 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt with a $200 gift, the Free Speech TV hoodie, with a $360 gift, everything I just mentioned, including my new book, although, again, with the caveat that it'll be a few months before you get it in the mail. They literally have not yet been printed. I haven't seen it yet. With a $500 gift, Louise and I are putting together another webinar. This is where you watch us in real time. You can ask questions, interact with us on the internet about dealing with resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma, and not just political stuff. And with a $1,000 gift, we have a meet and greet. You can come here to Portland, Oregon. You can sit right over there on the couch and watch the show for the last hour, and then we'll go next door and we'll have, or down the street, and we'll have some lunch, and we'll have a great time. So call 877-378-8669 now, please. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our show. They're going to take a break fairly shortly here, and we'll be talking with you about what you think's going on and with the Michael Cohen hearings at 202-808-9925. But right now, let's go back to the hearings.
Disclosed on my tax return.
And in fact, when your accountant talked to you about those deposits, you told them you wouldn't pay for a memo that you didn't ask to be done?
That's inaccurate.
So the
that's
sentencing court in New York has it wrong?
Okay. I don't know what Mr. Getzel wrote, my accountant. There are a series of issues regarding his memo anyway, including the fact he's almost directed me in an earlier memo to commit fraud. But putting all that aside with Jeff Getzel, the answer to that is I pled guilty, all right? And I made my mistake, and I'm going, as I've said 100 times now, right? I'm not so sure why the singular attack on my taxes, if you want to look at them, I'm more than happy to show them to you.
If the chairman will give me 20 minutes, I got plenty of other things to talk about.
Every single word that's written
all right, I'm going to reclaim my time.
Is not 100% accurate.
Well, I'm done.
And that's exactly why when it comes to the credibility, why I asked Mr. Davis, Mr. Monaco, to please let's figure out how.
But that's my point with the credibility.
So that you understand.
These aren't isolated. These are not isolated incidents of attack. These were constant deceptions. Whether it's rolling over a $20 million line of credit to a $14 million credit, you went through great lengths to conceal that from one bank, while at the same time you are reducing your net income to another bank. These aren't things that happened on January 1 of 18, January 1 of 17, January 1 of 15. These are things that were constantly involved on a. My question is, was it exhausting keeping track of all the lies you were telling all these people?
The gentleman's time has expired. You may.
I don't have an answer for him. I
Very
just
well,
thank you for
Mr.
continuing the narrative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Cohen, good luck on your road to redemption.
Thank you. It's going to be a long way.
The opposite of that is perdition, as I remember, and that's particularly hard on your children. So I wish you well, and I wish your family well. Mr. Cohen, as you sort of describe your road to here, Mr. Cooper asked you when the moment was, or moments when you decided you needed to change. It strikes me there is a transition that you have illuminated here. Your period of time, the 10 years working for somebody who you admired as a developer, and then when Charlottesville happened, and quite frankly, when the special counsel called you in, obviously was a key part of it, or you wouldn't be here. But the in-between part I find really interesting and troubling, at least in terms of appearances and confidence that the American people would have in this institution and democracy, quite frankly. So during that period of time, I want to ask you about two specific, if we have enough time. First, the Trump Tower. So you were negotiating for this. As you said, it was to be the tallest building in Europe. In your guilty plea with the special counsel, you quote, say, it quotes, Cohen asked individual one, is that President Trump?
Yes.
Okay. About the possibility of President Trump traveling to Russia in connection with the Moscow project, and asked a senior campaign official about potential business travel to Russia. When did this conversation happen? Do you recall?
Early on in the campaign.
And who was the campaign official?
Corey Lewandowski.
What did you discuss in this meeting?
Possibility of which dates that Mr. Trump would have availability if, in fact, that we were going to go over to Russia to take a look at the project. I'm sorry, sir?
So go ahead.
Unfortunately, it never came to fruition because we were never successful in getting the first prong of what I needed, which was ownership or control over a piece of property. And until such time, there was no reason to come up with a date. But when I first received the information request to go to Russia, what I decided to do is I spoke to Mr. Trump about it. He told me to speak to Corey and see what dates might be available if I got the information I needed.
So it stopped because of appearances, or did it stop because the parties decided not to pursue it?
I'm so sorry, I don't understand your question.
So why did the pursuit of the Trump Tower that Mr. Trump has now said, of course he pursued it because he thought he might be going back into the development business, why was the reason that the deal stopped?
Because he won the presidency.
Okay. So in that interim period of time, you must admit it looks troubling that now that we know what foreign influence was attempting to do, whether there was collusion or not, it certainly appears troubling that Mr. Trump was part of this negotiation, and at the same time what we know, perhaps separately, that the Russians were engaged in our election.
Well, I don't know about them being engaged in the election. I can only talk for myself. Here I would say to Mr. Trump, in response to his question, what's going on with Russia, is I'm still waiting for documents, and then that night at a rally, he would turn around and do his battle cry of no Russia, no collusion, no involvement, witch hunt.
Okay, on a separate subject, but somewhat related, on January 17 of this year, the Wall Street Journal published a story stating that you hired John Gager, the owner of a consulting company who works for Liberty University in Virginia, to rig at least 2 online polls related to Donald Trump. Did you hire him?
Those were back in, I believe, 2015?
2014.
2014.
2014. So you did hire him?
Yes, I spoke with Mr. Gauger about manipulating these online polls.
And did he use bots to manipulate the poll?
He used algorithms, and if that includes bots, then the answer is yes.
Yes, that's accurate. Did the president have any involvement?
Yes.
In directing you to do this?
Yes.
What were the results of the poll?
Exactly where we wanted them to be. In the CNBC poll, we came in at number 9, and the Drudge Report, he was top of the Drudge Report as well.
Okay.
Poll.
And
please understand also, the CNBC poll was called The Contenders, and it was top 250 people that they named, and it was supposed to be the top 10 most influential people.
Let me just finish with, earlier today, you directed a comment to my colleagues, and I'm quoting, so correct me if I got this wrong. You said the more people who follow Mr. Trump, the more people will be where I am. Is it your expectation that people in the administration will end up where you are?
Sadly, if they follow blindly like I have, I think the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Time has expired. Mr. Stubbe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I ran for Congress, I talked about how Washington was broken. But I certainly did not expect the level of political gamemanship, partisanship, and sheer stagnation of policies that would improve the lives of Americans that I'm witnessing today. It is terribly disappointing to me that this committee and its chairman chose to spend our time in questioning an individual that has zero probative value.
This is
and zero
Republican
credibility,
Representative Greg
instead
Stubbe
spending
of
our limited
California,
time
or excuse me,
focusing
of
on
Florida. It's his first term in the House of Representatives, and that's who he
Here
is.
we are, taking testimony from a convicted liar, and not someone who has just lied to his clients or family or friends, but testimony from an individual who deliberately and premeditatedly lied to this body. He lied to Congress through false statements and written statements. He lied to Congress through his testimony. He then amplified his false statements by releasing and repeating his lies to the public, including the other potential witnesses. Yet now, we on this committee and the American people are expected to believe Mr. Cohen's testimony. I don't know a juror in America that would believe anything Mr. Cohen says given his past actions and lies. Mr. Cohen, you stood before multiple congressional committees before today and raised your right hand and swore an oath to be honest. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And you lied to those congressional committees. Is that correct?
Previously?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
You stated that Trump never directed you to lie to Congress. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Therefore, you lied to Congress on your own accord and then admitted to lying to Congress. Correct?
I've already stated my piece on that. I knew what he wanted me to do. I was staying on party line.
But he never directed you to lie to Congress?
He did not use those words, no.
In your evidence that you provided this committee a mere 2 hours before the hearing started, were payments made to you by Mr. Trump, correct?
Amongst other things, yes.
Yet other than your testimony here today, there is absolutely no proof that those specific payments were for those specific purposes. Is that correct?
It's my testimony that the check that I produced as part of this testimony, the $35,000, and then the second check that's signed by Alan Weisselberg and Don Trump Jr., were 2 checks out of the 11 that were meant for the reimbursement of the hush money payment to Stormy Daniels.
So in your testimony on page 13, you claim, and I quote, Mr. Trump directed me to use my own personal funds from a home equity line of credit to avoid any money being tracked back to him that could negatively impact his campaign. Do you have any proof of this direction?
Just the payment, sir.
So no email?
Mr. Trump doesn't have email.
So no recording?
I do not have recordings, no.
No text message?
Mr. Trump doesn't text message.
So no direction other than your testimony today that that's what the payment was for?
And the fact that I paid on his behalf, at his direction, the money to Keith Davidson's IOLA account. You're right, there's no other documentation I have.
So nothing that you produce as part of your exhibits prove that President Trump directed you in any way to make that payment?
I don't even know how to answer that, sir.
Well, it's pretty simple. There's nothing in the evidence that shows, or the exhibits that you provided today, that show that Trump directed you to make those payments.
Other than the non-disclosure agreement that has been seized by government authorities and is widely shown, I don't believe there's anybody out there that believes that I just decided to pay $130,000 on his behalf.
Well, you were his attorney for over 10 years.
That doesn't mean that I pay $130,000.
Well, it doesn't also mean that he wasn't paying you for representation of counsel.
Okay.
So how did President Trump even know you had a HELOC?
I'm so sorry, sir?
How did President Trump even know you had a HELOC?
Because we discussed it. Because I told him the same thing, that I didn't want my wife to find out about it. And as one additional, Rudy Giuliani himself came out and expressed that Mr. Trump reimbursed me for the money that was spent to pay Stormy Daniels.
And did you tell Chris Cuomo that you had no access to Mr. Trump during October and November of 2016?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're referring to.
Your interview with Chris Cuomo.
I would need to see the document.
Did you also tell Chris Cuomo that you made these payments without telling Mr. Trump because you wanted to protect Mr. Trump?
And I was protecting Mr. Trump.
And you told him that you made these payments without telling him?
We're listening to Michael Cohen's testimony before the House Oversight Committee. Some fascinating stuff. I thought Jackie Spears' question, has the president asked you to threaten anybody? Yes. How many times? I'm not sure. More than 50, yes. More than 100, yes. More than 500, yes. It's getting pretty amazing. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
About 20 minutes ago, Chairman Cummings said that there would be a break, a pause for a vote. I'm not sure if the vote has been changed or not. We'll just keep following.
You're not accurate, and I don't feel good about any of this. And this was not my intention.
Ms. Lawrence.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to put on the record, as being a Black American and having endured the public comments of racism from the sitting president, as being a Black person, I can only imagine what's being said in private. And to prop up one member of our entire
This is Representative Brenda Lawrence. She's represented parts of Detroit since 2015 before the U.S. House.
Totally insulting. And in this environment of expecting a president to be inclusive and to look at his administration speaks volume. So I have some questions. I want to talk to you about this intimidation of witness. Mr. Cohen, you were initially scheduled to testify before the House Oversight Committee on February the 7th, but your legal team delayed your testimony, quoting, ongoing threats against your family from the president and Attorney Giuliani. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then on November 29th, after you admitted that the president's negotiations over a real estate project in Russia continue well through the summer before the 2016 election, President Trump called you, quote, a weak person and accused you of lying. And then on December 16th, after 2018, after you disclosed that it was the president who directed you to arrange hush money payments to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal to conceal his extramarital affairs, he called you, the President of the United States, a rat. Mr. Cohen, why do you feel or believe that the president is repeatedly attacking you? You are stating that you feel intimidated, asking us to protect you, following your cooperation with the law enforcement.
When you have access to 60+ million people that follow you on social media, and you have the ability within which to spark some action by individuals that follow him, and from his own words that he can walk down Fifth Avenue, shoot someone, and get away with it. It's never comfortable when the President of the United States...
What do you think he can do to you?
A lot, and it's not just him. It's those people that follow him in his rhetoric.
What is a lot?
I don't know. I don't walk with my wife if we go to a restaurant or we go somewhere. I don't walk with my children. I make them go before me because I have fear, and it's the same fear that I had before when he initially decided to drop that tweet in my cell phone. I receive some, and I'm sure you'll understand, I receive some tweets, I receive some Facebook Messenger, all sorts of social media attacks upon me, whether it's the private direct message that I've had to turn over to the Secret Service because they are the most vile, disgusting statements that anyone can ever receive. And when it starts to affect your children, that's when it really affects you.
On January 20th, 2019, Mr. Giuliani called your father-in-law, quote, a criminal, and said that he may have ties to organized crime. Mr. Cohen, do you believe that the President, Mr. Giuliani, publicly targeted your father-in-law as an effort to intimidate you? Can you elaborate? Why is your father-in-law being pulled into this?
I don't know the answer to that. My father-in-law was in the clothing business, came to this country because in the 1972-73, the expulsion of Jews from the Ukraine. He came here to this country. He worked hard, and he's now enjoying his retirement. Never in my life did I think that Mr. Trump would do something so disgraceful. And he's attacking him because he knows I care about my family. And to hurt me, he's trying to hurt them. Interestingly enough, my father-in-law's biggest investments happen to be in a Trump property. So it just doesn't make any sense to me.
I want to be clear, any efforts to prevent a witness from testifying in front of Congress is against the law. I want to be real clear about that. And as the chairman has said, retaliating against witnesses and threatening their families and members is a textbook mob tactic that does not benefit the President of the United States or this country. And I want to be on the record, this hearing is not about discrediting the President. It's about the oath of office that we take as members of Congress to have checks and balances and to meet the laws and the policies of this country to serve. Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Roy.
Mr. Cohen, I too want to offer my heartfelt thoughts for your family and what they're going through. I know it's tough, and for your time here today, I know it's tough for you to stand here in front of this committee. The chairman suggested you volunteered to come here. You testified that you were asked to come here.
Welcome back. We're listening to this is Congressman Chip Roy, Republican of Texas, who been aide to Ted Cruz and John Cornyn.
Yet you are going to prison for 3 years. Yes or no?
Yes.
The prosecutors of the Southern District of New York say to secure loans, Cohen falsely understated the amount of debt he was carrying and omitted information from his personal financial statements to induce a bank to lend on incomplete information. You told my colleague here today that you did not commit bank fraud. Not parsing different statutes, which I understand could be. I want for clarity, are you or are you not guilty of making false statements to a financial institution, yes or no?
Yes, I pled guilty.
You said clearly to Mr. Cloud and Mr. Jordan that the Southern District of New York lawyers were being untruthful in characterizing your desire to work in the administration. Do you say again that the lawyers of the Southern District of New York are being untruthful in making that characterization, yes or no?
I'm saying that's not accurate.
Okay, so you're saying they're being untruthful.
I'm not using the word untruthful. That's yours. I'm saying that that's not accurate. I did not want a role or a title in the administration.
I'm sure the lawyers.
I got the title that I wanted.
I'm sure the lawyers at the SDNY appreciate that distinction. Question, you testified today you have never been to Prague and have never been to the Czech Republic. Do you stand behind that statement?
Yes, I do.
I offer into the record an article in known conservative news magazine Mother Jones by David Korn, in which he says he reviewed his notes from a phone call with Mr. Cohen that Mr. Cohen said, quote, I haven't been to Prague in 14 years. I was in Prague for one afternoon 14 years ago, end quote. Question, you, as my friend Mr. Armstrong rightly inquired, offered to the committee taped information involving clients with the bat of an eye. Do you stand behind that, yes or no?
I'm sorry. I don't understand what you said so fast.
You, as my friend Mr. Armstrong rightly inquired, offered to this committee taped information involving your clients with the bat of an eye. Do you stand behind that offer?
If the chairman asks me, and I'll take it under advisement now, and it's not a problem in terms of attorney-client privilege, yes, I will turn it over.
You, as my friend Mr. Meadows pointed out, misled this committee even today in a written submission that contradicted your testimony. You have suggested you are going to review that. Are you going to review it in our next break to correct the record, yes or no?
Yes.
Question, you helped out the president's campaign or were involved in the campaign as a representative, as a spokesman, even in your words today. It was your idea for the campaign dating back to 2011. Is that accurate, yes or no?
Yes.
2011 is a year that sticks in my head, for it's the year my daughter was born, and it was the year I was diagnosed with cancer. I was not then pushing for Donald Trump to be president. I was fighting cancer. Even in 2016, I was publicly backing a certain Republican from Texas. Some might guess who it was. But you were all in. And you either wanted Donald Trump to be your president or it was good for the country.
We'll be back with more of the hearings of the House Oversight Committee with Michael Cohen testifying in just a few moments. It's 27 minutes past the hour. Stick around. And eventually, if they take a break, we'll pick up your phone calls. Stick around.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And isn't it fascinating how the Republicans are not interested in anything Mr. Cohen may know about Trump's crimes? They just want to try and trash Michael Cohen.
In amassing debt, $450 million.
TV needs you. I mean, you know that, right? You're watching the show right now. Everybody and his brother and sisters is a fundraising drive. We heard it on the radio yesterday, the local NPR station, the local Pacifica station. Everybody is in fund drive. It's spring. It's the beginning of a new year. It's also a political season when every politician on earth is asking for money. I get it that we're all being. I mean, I get letters from Donald Trump begging for money, right? Which I share with you on this program. I do that so you don't have to. But the bottom line is that Free Speech TV we're not hitting our goals. We haven't hit our goal. any day yet so far in this fund drive. We are way behind, and we need your help. This network is really an important thing. This network is an important part of the media ecosphere, the landscape. I had this is not Congressman Pocan I'm speaking of, but I had a congressman on the show a while ago, and later on we were talking, and he said, I was just amazed. He said, I travel all around the country, and everywhere I go, people say to me, hey, I heard that you were on Thom Hartmann's program, or, Thom Hartmann said such and such, or whatever. Or, he was amazed. I'm not. I mean, not by way of bragging or anything, but Free Speech TV, I mean, we're on Dish, we're on DirecTV, we're on cable, we're on the internet. The things that have been accomplished by this little tiny network with a budget that's literally less than half of the annual paycheck of one of the evening MSNBC stars. This little network on this little budget literally reaches the entire country, especially in red states where people don't have easy access to cable, so they get satellite TV, maybe you, and they get satellite TV and they're skipping through the channels and, oh, what's this Free Speech TV thing? That sounds kind of cool. Check this out. And it's like, whoa, somebody's talking the truth? I mean, right? The almost shock that people experience when they see a television program on a national television network with millions of viewers going, on which you will hear somebody say, well, Richard Nixon committed treason to become president. So apparently did Ronald Reagan. George Herbert Walker Bush shouldn't have been president. When they did the recount in Florida, they found that Al Gore actually won the election. Donald Trump is a criminal and a con man. Well, that's becoming obvious to the country, but the rest of it, do you hear that on other television networks? I don't. Do you hear about the corruption in the White House on other television networks? How many lobbyists, how many billionaires are in the cabinet? How many lobbyists are heading up federal agencies right now? How they're auctioning off, our public lands, the Interior Department, how they're shutting down regulations that keep your children and grandchildren safe from the poisons that come out of the petro-billionaires' factories and refineries. I mean, you don't hear that on the other networks. You don't hear about the money that the petro-billionaires are pouring into the campaigns, that every single Republican who's going to be, going after Michael Cohen or anybody else, frankly, every single one of those Republicans is taking money from petro-billionaires and other billionaires whose really only interest is to continue polluting the planet and making a profit by ripping us off, essentially. You just don't hear it. You do hear. So please call 877-378-8669 and make your contribution now. We need your help. $20 gets you a flag lapel pin, a Free Speech TV flag lapel pin. With a $60 contribution, you get the Free Speech TV 6 sticker pack. With a $72 contribution, you get a copy of my brand new book. It just became available on Amazon, but it's only available for pre-order. It won't be out until June. We're hoping, assuming that we'll get advance copies perhaps the last week of May, and I can get autographed book plates in them, and we can get them to you as an autographed copy of my brand new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, which tells the true story of the Second Amendment, that the Second Amendment was passed to preserve the slave patrols, specifically in Virginia and Georgia, although the Carolinas were also very concerned about that. But, this is mostly the work of Patrick Henry, the guy who said, give me liberty or give me death, and was the biggest slaveholder in Virginia. Irony of ironies, huh? 1 minute. This is, anyhow, that's that book, $72 for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. A $100 gift, the Free Speech TV t-shirt with a $200 gift, the Free Speech TV hoodie with a $360 gift, everything I just mentioned, including my new book, although, again, with the caveat that it'll be a few months before you get it in the mail. They literally have not yet been printed. I haven't seen it yet. With a $500 gift, Louise and I are putting together another webinar. This is where you watch us in real time. You can ask questions, interact with us on the internet about dealing with resolving fear, anxiety, stress, and trauma, and not just political stuff. And with a $1,000 gift, we have a meet and greet. You can come here to Portland, Oregon. You can sit right over there on the couch and watch the show for the last hour, and then we'll go next door and we'll have her down the street and we'll have some lunch and we'll have a great time. So call 877-378-8669 now, please. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And I yield back at this time.
Committee will now stand in recess again. We will come back. Listen up, 35 minutes.
Thom Hartmann here with you, and the committee just went into recess. Very interesting. The congresswoman from the U.S. Virgin Islands, Democrat, was just asking Michael Cohen about the names of people who would be able to corroborate what he was saying. She was the first person to ask him what job he held prior to last year, and he said that he was the deputy chair of the Republican National Committee's finance, whatever you call it, arm department, something. And it's like, I was tweeting about this last night. This guy had an office down the hall from Donald Trump. He was listed as a vice president of the Trump Organization, and he was the deputy vice chair of the RNC's, financial committee or fundraising committee or whatever it was called. And instead, Trump tweets out, well, he was a lawyer and he was a lawyer to other people too. Well, yeah. Who are those other people? Well, one was Sean Hannity, and the other was this guy who was the other chair or vice chair of the RNC Finance Committee, who got a woman pregnant and ended up paying for, as I recall, it was an abortion. I don't think she had the baby, but he got her pregnant, and he was some billionaire buddy of Donald Trump's. These were his clients. Pretty amazing stuff. So, we've had a ringside seat here to just an extraordinary performance. The Republicans, with the exception of Justin Amash of Michigan, who seemed to have some interest in what was going on. He, of course, is he's the anti-war Republican, right? He's the more libertarian type. But with the exception of him, pretty much, I would say every Republican had only one goal. And that was to come up with a sound bite, either to sound, so I'm really outraged, oh my God, how can we do it? Either to produce a clip, a 20, 30, 40-second clip that would play over and over again on Fox News, so they'd get reelected and they'd get, props from the rubes back in their districts. Or, well, I shouldn't call them rubes, the victims of Murdoch's Fox News. Or indicting Michael Cohen and, reducing his credibility, damaging his credibility somehow. So let's get into your calls and your thoughts about all this. Steve in Perrysville, Indiana. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind? What do you think of what you've heard so far on these hearings?
Just like the last lady Republican, she sat there and said, well, we could be doing all of this other stuff, like the kids that they had in the
childhood separation,
basically prisons.
Yeah, now we hear that 5,000 of these children were sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
5,000.
And then she says infrastructure. Well, how many years did they have the control of the House?
2 full years.
Yeah, and what did they do? They didn't do anything on any of that stuff.
That's right. And they didn't bring any of these witnesses. I mean, one of the real slapdown moments was, one of the Republicans was like, trying to go after Cohen and saying, we got this, liar. And one of the Democrats came back and said, well, wait a minute, here's all the convicted, the people who've been convicted of these crimes, and you guys had no interest during the last 2 years in talking to any of these people.
Yeah, they never talked to nobody or...
Yeah. And obviously, they have no interest in talking to Michael Cohen, the Republicans. So it just looks to me like these Republicans are just grandstanding, for the 89%, I guess it is, of the dwindling Republican Party, who obsessively watch Fox News or listen to right-wing hate radio and think that Donald Trump is the reincarnation of Jesus. Steve, thanks for the call. Well said. Denise in Calumet, Michigan. Denise, your thoughts?
Hi, Tom. Well, I think the Republicans got to
got together and rehearsed one big lie for the whole day.
Oh, of course.
And I've called every one of them as they've been speaking in Congress, the Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
They are not taking calls, not a one.
Of course.
They're not taking any calls.
They don't do town hall meetings. They don't take calls. They ignore their constituents. You know, all they pay attention to are the checks coming from the oil companies and the chemical companies.
Exactly.
And, you know, that's it.
And the other
Drug
thing
companies.
is they have the audacity to talk about wasting taxes on this hearing after everything they did with Hillary's emails and no convictions, no indictments with Hillary.
And Benghazi.
Right, and Benghazi, yeah, you got
Same thing.
You got that.
4 years of Benghazi, right?
Exactly. They've been doing nothing but wasting our tax money for years,
Yeah.
and now they're trying to block the truth. That's all. The only ones that want the truth are the Democrats, and I'm proud to be a Democrat.
There you go. I'm with you, Denise. Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. Edward in Sierra Madre, California. Edward, your thoughts on the Cohen hearings?
Yeah, hey, Tom. Thanks for the opportunity, long-time listener. You know, Tom, the hypocrisy is amazing. There was this one incident where I think it was a committee member, Goner, said, how can the American people sit here and listen to this liar? And I'm just sitting here, oh, my God, Donald Trump, they've sat here and listened to him, and then people voted for him. It's unbelievable how they created this, and now they're putting their foot in their mouth. And to what you said, it's sound bites. They're trying to get reelected, so they're putting their highlight clips together for Fox News.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right, Edward. I think you're absolutely right.
And you know what really gets me, Tom, is it makes me feel good to actually see for my own eyes what I've been feeling. For that one congresswoman is from the Virgin Islands to say, yeah, we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah. And there are other committees that can be holding other hearings, and there's, in fact, they just all went off for a vote right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We just went all out to vote. I mean, it's like they're pandering to a smaller group of people that just don't have the data. And I feel bad for those Americans who have just lack of information and who are being lied to and who are unfortunately believing a lie.
Yeah, it's really a tragedy that so many Americans have latched on to the billionaire news service, Fox so-called News. And Edward, thank you for the call. Owned by Rupert Murdoch, a billionaire that every single day promotes the interests of the billionaires, things like tax cuts and cutting regulations so you get more pollution but more corporate profits, those kinds of things. That's all they promote, and desperately lie to promote the interests of the politicians who own them, who they own. Rich in Indiana. Hey, Rich, your thoughts on the Cohen hearings?
Hi, Tom. Thanks. What we're seeing here on display is the culture of corruption, and the Republicans are working real hard to gaslight the audience and victim blame Cohen and call him a killjoy, basically, for being this standing man, this stoiky mujik that stands up against the culture of corruption. They're saying that he's no good for saying, what he is because, oh, God, he's a liar. And what we have to recognize is that because he is, in fact, this very purposeful killjoy, standing up against this culture of corruption, showing the above-the-law impunity over all U.S. code. Every title in U.S. code can be broken by this above-the-law impunity. Yeah. And I've told you before, Tom, this is secret law, and it's permitted, and it's legal, and we need to be able to wrap our heads around this.
Okay, got it. I got it, Rich. One of the things that I thought was most amazing, and back to your calls in just a second, but was the moment when when Michael Cohen was asked about the so-called elevator tape. Apparently, there's a story that David Pecker and AMI, the National Enquirer, went out and bought for $15,000 or tried to buy. That there is a tape, the elevators have surveillance tapes, and that inside an elevator, Donald Trump assaulted Melania, hit his wife. And they asked Cohen about it, and he could have simply said, I don't know. To the best of my knowledge, it doesn't exist, but I don't know, it's possible. But instead, he said, no, I just, I know that they tried to track this down. We've heard the rumors. B, nobody ever produced that tape. And C, I don't believe that Donald Trump would ever hit his wife. He just came out and said that. I mean, this is not a guy who is trying to just, destroy Donald Trump. He's simply telling, from his point of view, what is the truth. And that was the moment when it really hit me that this is not about payback. It's not about revenge. It's about doing what he has committed to the prosecutors he will do, which is simply tell the truth. Bobby in Kaiser, Oregon. Hey, Bobby, what's up?
Thanks for taking my call, long-time listener. Just as you've pointed out many times, Tom, all those Republicans said Democrat Party.
Yeah.
And a couple of them even emphasized the rat part. Did you notice that?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Well, that was Joe McCarthy's advice back in the 1950s. Never say Democratic.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds too Democratic. That sounds good. Always say Democrat Party and emphasize the rat at the end.
Yeah, and they're all a bunch of hypocrites, too. They controlled everything for 2 years, and now they're talking about, we want to get this done, we want to get that done. They had 2 years to get stuff done, and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of hypocrites, Tom.
Yep. And now we want to know the truth, but we don't want to actually ask any questions about Donald Trump. We just want to know about your taxes, or are you going to write a book? Give me a break. Thank you, Bobby, for the call. Michael in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Michael.
Yes. Hi, Tom. Tom, I just wanted to comment here. Generally speaking, what I'm seeing that's coming out that's going to be a real problem for Mr. Trump is the financials that are bound to come out. And also, Michael Cohen has a lot of that data, packed away, his income tax returns. I'm sure he has, copies, or at least,
I think the guy, Michael, the guy who's gonna nail Trump is Weisselberg, if I'm pronouncing it right. The guy who is the chief financial officer for the Trump Organization and has been since Fred Trump ran it.
Oh, a half a century's worth of information from Mr. Weisselberg, for sure. I'm from back there. I'm a little older than you. I just want to, my comment here, I wanted to hear from you to see if you think that's going to be a very strong point. But what I wanted to say is, with all of these things about Michael Cohen being a liar, do you remember the Valachi papers? That was a mafia guy who had been a hitman, and he had done a lot of stuff for his boss.
Yeah, you're talking back in the 60s or 70s, aren't you?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Joe
Well, he was a liar. They were trying to take him down, this guy, he's the one, he's the only, he's just a murderer and a street thug. Well, what happened? He brought down the original 5 families. He brought them down to street level. They got destroyed financially. So
that was the beginning of the end.
I'm no fan of Michael Cohen's, but what he's doing right now is really what we need to do to draw out the information.
And on a couple of different occasions, he pointed out that this was not just Donald Trump. This is Donald, Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric. What you're looking at here is the Trump crime family. And, I'm waiting for the RICO investigation to come out of the Southern District of New York. Michael, thank you for the call. I think absolutely this is going to be coming along. And I think Michael was about to say absolutely. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
It's coming up on 47 minutes past the hour. We're talking about the Cohen hearings, which are now in recess, and we'll be back. And welcome back. Al in Zanesville, Ohio. Hey, Al, your thoughts on the hearings?
Well, I think one of the things that has come out is there seems to be the way Trump operated, he wanted to keep away from the information that is detrimental. All of his decisions were on a phone, on a speakerphone. There's no
over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack.
To this point, that his complete inner circle is corrupt. However, he's not. I mean, that's a real paradox right there.
Yeah, it really is. And, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was when Michael Cohen, when they said basically, why would Trump do so many of these things like, negotiating his deal with on Trump Tower in Russia and Moscow while he's running for president. I mean, that's the sort of thing that would open somebody up to charges of treason, essentially. And Michael Cohen said because he didn't expect to win. And after he lost, he was going to go back to being a businessman, which then raises the question: okay, if he didn't expect to win, then why did he put so much effort and time and trouble and all that kind of stuff into trying to win, essentially, like suppressing the Stormy Daniels and suppressing the Karen McDougal? And I think the answer to that is that Trump figured that this is all about building his brand, that if he could lose to Hillary Clinton by just 1 or 2 states, if he could just barely win, or barely lose, excuse me, he fully intended to lose. This is like The Producers, like the old Mel Brooks movie. If he could just barely lose, he'd be worth a fortune, and he'd be made. And as Michael Cohen said today, they plan to make hundreds of millions of dollars off Trump Tower Moscow. Al, thanks for the call. Well said. Dan in Baldwin, Michigan. Hey, Dan, what's up?
Well, the people of America are realizing today that how powerful that Michael Cohen was, because it's taking all of the elected Republicans in Congress to take his place.
Yeah, it seems. It seems that I have not heard a single Republican. Justin Amash, I guess, asked 1 or 2 questions that were not unreasonable, but outside of that, every Republican has just been dedicated to basically a hit job. Absolutely. Dan, thank you. Well said. Patrick in Los Angeles. Hey, Patrick, what's up?
Hey, Tom. You know what? Okay, so Michael Cohen, he was asked several times about book deals and movies and profiting after all of this. I wish his response would have been, well, yeah, if you'll promise not to take money from the oil industry or the defense industry or, so on, the gun industry, then I'll do the same.
Well, he was being, that's the sort of wise guy stuff that we saw with the former acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker. And I think he's going to be in big trouble over it, and I don't think it served him well. I would have loved to hear that too, Patrick. It would have been a great slapdown, but I'm not sure that that's. I mean, he's trying to take the position of I'm a nice guy. You can believe what I'm saying, rather than I'm a partisan and I'm trying to smack down the president. This is where, when he defended Trump and said he would never hit his wife, that was the thing that told me that this guy is actually just right down the middle telling the truth. Patrick, thank you for the call. We'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. It's 51 minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Talk media for the sane left among us. Actually, I think the number of sane in our country is growing moment by moment. We'll be right back. Hey, over at ThomHartmann.com, we've got some really cool stuff. A lot of people don't realize that we produce a daily newsletter, and Sue puts we call it Sue's Daily Stack on there, which is literally a link to every story that I've talked about in the show. So all the research is right there. It's free. We don't share or sell our subscriber list. It's there's just it's there. It's there for you. And it's over at ThomHartmann.com. You can sign up for the free newsletter. You also can get my big picture take of the day, which is exclusively over at our website at ThomHartmann.com, as well as links to our videos, the book reports we typically do every day, all this stuff and more. It's all there at ThomHartmann.com. So check it out and sign up for our newsletter. I think you'll really enjoy it and appreciate it and find a lot of value there. We put a lot of work into this stuff. And you'll find it all right there on our website at ThomHartmann.com. And be sure to check out the newsletter and sign up for it. It's great.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Thom Hartmann here with you, taking your calls, your thoughts on what we've been hearing all day here in the Michael Cohen hearings. David in Beverly Hills, California. Hey, David, what's on your mind?
Hey, how are you?
Good. What's up?
So basically, I wanted to just touch base with you on this. I actually met Trump years ago. I owned a major development company here in Beverly Hills, and we were almost slated to do the Palos Verdes Estates golf course for him. So I'm not talking as someone who's never met him. I actually did meet him
and
had almost a business deal with him. But what I wanted to say was this, and probably this is the most I'm an independent, so I can go either way. I don't just follow one party line. But I will say this, and hopefully this communicates or resonates to the Democrats that are listening, is the simplicity of it is the house of cards is falling for this guy, and it's falling fast. And what's amazing is you're talking about sound bites where these Republicans are coming forward trying to get a sound bite. Well, the reality is this, is that those sound bites are going to come back to actually bite them where they don't want to be bitten. Because what's going to happen is when they go up for re-election, and Trump is actually, there's enough on him now to implicate him and to actually convict once he's out of office. Well, that really kind of screws these other people politically, because now their political opponents, whether it's senator, governor, doesn't matter, they can actually use those sound bites against them and say, here you are standing up for a convicted criminal, convicted this, convicted that,
right?
Which will actually do a major swing for the Democratic Party. Now, I don't know if that's, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen, fairly soon, but
it's just like the way that the Democrats used the clips of Republicans saying that the Affordable Care Act would be a disaster and we've got to veto it, kill it, all that kind of thing, during the last election, and a lot of Republicans lost their seats because of that. I think you're absolutely right, David.
You're going to see a major swing in the next year to 2 years, especially if he's actually pulled out of office, or I don't know what the legality is on trying to actually convict a sitting president.
It's being debated right now whether the Nixon Justice Department and the Reagan Justice Departments concluded that you can't indict a sitting president. Big whoop, right? There's nothing in the Constitution says you can't, and I guarantee you go back and read the transcripts of the hearings, the debates in Philadelphia in Independence Hall in the summer of 1787, and particularly the Article II debates. Those guys did not want a king in the White House. The only kingly power they were willing to give him was the power to pardon. They never would have contemplated the idea that a sitting president shouldn't be able to be indicted for a crime. They wanted him to be as accountable to the law as anybody else. And the fact that the Nixon and Reagan Justice Departments said, no, we don't think you can prosecute Nixon or Reagan, when Nixon and Reagan both committed treason to get into the White House. It should be a clue.
The only last thing I wanted to say was that they keep going after Cohen's credibility, and it's like I really wish he would just say, I had a really good teacher.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, they keep going after the fact that it's like that he's a liar, that he's a this. Oh, you lied on your taxes here. You lied on this. You lied on that. You lied. And he's like, the simplicity of it.
But David, it's just like where he said, I don't think the elevator tape exists because I don't think Trump would hit his wife. I don't think he's interested in trying to damage Donald Trump. I think he's simply interested in atoning for the crimes he's committed and cleaning his life up.
At some point, someone has to look themselves in the face no matter what they've done, and we all feel it at some point in time. I'm not saying that he is beyond reproach, but it doesn't mean that, it's so funny because they're sitting here talking about, well, you lied. And it's like, how many of these politicians are sitting up in their office right now having lied to get where they are?
Yeah, absolutely.
But acting, it's like,
David, I got to run. I'm sorry, we're out of time. But your points are all very well made, and it's fascinating to talk to somebody who nearly did business with Donald Trump, and I guess danced with him a bit. Thanks so much for being with us today. We'll continue our conversation tomorrow. Actually, Congressman Pocan will be with us tomorrow in the first hour of our program, taking your calls for the hour. First hour? Yep. And so we'll be back, and we'll continue this conversation, too. In the meantime, don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. Get out there, get active. Tag You're It. See you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
From UN headquarters, I'm Luke Vargas.